A mother of four gone missing, then found murdered.
It's the Karen Swift story, the woman last seen alive at a Halloween party, and was a second woman also in danger. An all-new 2020 starts right now.
It was a really big deal. This beautiful blonde-headed lady comes up missing after a Halloween party.
It was just supposed to be a fun night out, adults only.
What's the overall view of this young mom who suddenly goes missing?
People liked Karen, they liked being around her.
Tonight, the shocking trial and the ex-wife you'll only see on 2020.
This is a man I was married to that I shouldn't have been afraid of.
But what about his first wife?
My mom was going out more, which made me start to question why.
When they found Karen's vehicle, it had a badly damaged flat tire.
It appears that this screw was manually inserted into the tire.
It was literally screwed into the tire. So this is where you found the smashed cell phones?
In this area here.
Not one, but two smashed phones.
I thought maybe somebody saw her walking and grabbed her.
She doesn't hold back. I can see Karen going over there and letting him have it.
This case is wild, to put it mildly. It's wild because the circumstances are just so unique.
Karen Swift's Halloween costume was a very sexy black costume.
Black skirt, black tights, black shoes. And she had a black, kind of a Mardi Gras type mask that she was wearing.
I think she was supposed to be a cat. She had a skirt on. It was very form-fitting.
So it was va-va-voom.
It was.
What began as an innocent night of Halloween partying was just the beginning of a tragic story that would engulf not only Karen Swift, but her whole family and almost everyone in this close-knit community.
There was going to be a costume party on October 29th, 2011. It was held at a place that here in Dyersburg it's called The Farms. It's a country club that's attached to the golf course.
Dyersburg, Tennessee is just a small hamlet in western Tennessee. It's not far from the Mississippi River.
Dyersburg is a small, very closely knit town. Everybody pretty much knows everybody.
I think the majority of the population still has that old Southern hospitality kind of greet everybody, wave. If you know somebody when you're driving down the road, you wave to them.
There's only 38,000 people here. Most people have grown up here, lived here their whole lives.
And I think that you take the word of mouth and you add the social media aspect to it now, and everyone is almost always in everyone else's business.
44-year-old Karen Swift marries husband David in 1989. Originally from Arkansas, they moved to Dyersburg, Tennessee with their family about 2 decades later in 2008.
When I first moved to Tennessee, I really liked it. I enjoyed it. It was very peaceful, and getting to know all my new friends and, meet new people was fun.
They didn't know anyone in Dyer County, and they made the move here, apparently for the schools. There are some good schools in this area.
Together, David and Karen Swift had 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 younger girls, including their daughter Ashley.
Growing up, my mom was very involved. She loved taking us to sports, dance, cheer. She just had that very caring and nurturing personality.
She was just a wonderful mother. She would do anything for her children. They were number one in her life. They came before anything else.
Karen was always kind of a fun-loving, bubbly type of personality. Tried to, even when things were not going particularly well, tried to keep a positive attitude.
Her friends really liked her, and she had a lot of friends. So she was someone who was beautiful, someone who appeared to be happy with her life, and things appeared to be going very well for her.
Karen was outgoing, gregarious. She made friends very easily. People liked Karen. They liked being around her.
And on this cool, clear October night, Karen was headed out with her friends, while her daughter Ashley, who was 9 at the time, was heading to a sleepover at her friend's house.
I remember I was staying at a friend's house, and my mom was going to a Halloween party with some of her friends, and my dad was going to stay home with my sister.
Karen Swift went to the Halloween party with Bill Bona and Kathy Bona.
The party was hosted by 15 to 20 different couples. The women kind of did all the decorations, put everything together. The guys just kind of showed up.
And it was just supposed to be a fun night out. Adults only, dress up, have fun in a costume, and just socialize with one another. Karen arrived at the Halloween party probably around 8 or a little after 8 p.m.
That night, Karen was in a pretty good mood. I mean, she was able to go out on the dance floor and talk to different people. People were drinking, having a good time. Music was playing. People were out dancing. Karen was walking around, talking to several people. I remember seeing her on the dance floor at least one time.
And she left with Bill and Kathy Bona probably around midnight that night. And they went to McDonald's to get some French fries.
So they went through the McDonald's drive-thru and then went home to Kathy and Bill Bona's house.
While they're at Bill and Kathy's house, she gets a call from her daughter, Ashley.
When we were starting to go to bed, I decided that I wanted to go home. I called my mom and asked her to come get me.
Karen immediately told Kathy, I've got to go, my baby's sick, I'm going to go pick her up. So she did. She left, she went and picked up her daughter at a friend's house, and then went home.
By now, of course, it's around 1:30 in the morning, the next day, October 30th. On her way home, Karen texts her husband, David, to let him know she's heading back to their house.
When she told him about going to pick up Ashley, he sent her a text response about the garage door is closed, come in the side door.
And then they arrived back at the Swift home around 2 a.m. that morning.
Karen goes to sleep downstairs, while her husband, David, is sleeping in a different bedroom upstairs.
David did not get up until the next morning around 10 or 10:30 when the girls woke him up.
It's now that the Swift family's entire world turns upside down.
The next morning, Karen was not at home. The girls were the first ones, according to David, to tell him that their mother was missing.
Remember, Karen and Ashley had returned home around 2 in the morning and went to sleep. But now it seems that sometime after that, Karen had somehow disappeared.
Between the time of probably 10 and 11 o'clock, Kathy Bona, her friend, had been trying to call her. David Swift, her husband, had been trying to call her. And so now people are starting to get seriously worried that something's happened to her.
After Bill and Kathy Bona didn't get a response from her, they kind of said, well, something not right. So they called David and asked him, where is Karen? And then they called the sheriff's office and said that she was missing.
Shortly after that, David made a phone call to the sheriff's department and reported that his wife was missing.
Karen's disappearance quickly became a mystery, and it would begin with the discovery of her abandoned car, a key piece of evidence that transforms this from a missing persons case into something far more sinister.
So she shows up missing. There was a lot of different theories about what was going on. There were many clouds of suspicion. It was a really big deal. This beautiful blonde-headed lady, mother of 4, comes up missing after a Halloween party. Everybody was talking about it.
The morning of Karen's disappearance, her car is discovered less than a half-mile away from her home.
At the corner of Millsfield Highway and Harness in Dyer County is where the broken-down SUV of 44-year-old Karen Swift was found.
I saw the car sit there for a day or so.
Karen's gone, and that's what's important, and we just want her to come back.
You could walk to it. It wasn't that far away on the highway, and it was there with a flat tire. So that's a clue. Her car's there.
Karen's vehicle was on the side of the road on Millsfield Highway right next to Harness Road. That's the road that Karen had lived on. Karen was not there.
It was in a normal state. It was parked on the side of the road. It had a flat tire to the right side. The investigation revealed that it was a screw in the tire.
Why would her car be up there? If she had come home, there was no one who said Karen walked home from up on the highway. So it would appear that Karen had left. But it wasn't very far for her to suddenly get a flat tire either.
Investigators believe that the tire had been manually deflated and that the screw had been intentionally inserted into the tire. Which begs the question, did somebody put it there on purpose to leave Karen stranded?
When we observed the car, we noticed a screw in the tire. If you look at this very closely, it appears that this screw was manually inserted into the tire.
It was literally screwed into the tire.
Literally screwed into the tire. And my theory was right once we sent it off for forensic analysis. It was manually placed in that tire.
And I wanted you to show me this screw. This is one that you actually ran over.
This is a screw actually over in my patrol unit that went all the way up in the tire. And you can see where it was on the rope.
Yeah. A lot of friction.
A lot of friction. This screw has no friction.
The lack of friction making investigators believe the screw hadn't been driven on. But how could that be?
They had not been in Dyer County that long because they had moved there. Karen's from Pocahontas, Arkansas, which is about 2 hours from Dyersburg. And it was about 4 years later that she disappeared.
The Swifts seemed to have a great life in Pocahontas. They were young and in love, and devoted parents, as their friend Holly Sutton tells us.
We met through just public school and ended up being fast friends. They were excellent parents. They had rules. They were fairly strict. They did everything with their children.
We moved ultimately for my dad's job to Tennessee. It was just a better opportunity. I enjoyed it. It was very peaceful. I do think she was happy. I think that she wasn't necessarily fully herself in Tennessee.
Karen wasn't acting like herself, and turns out there was a reason for it. Strains on their marriage, David's new job as a manager at a manufacturing plant, and Karen's apparent change in lifestyle in Dyersburg worried those closest to her.
She had just mentioned to me that it was very different. She just said that, she says, I don't know that you would get here. But she did say that she was meeting people and getting out.
I was used to her tucking me into bed every night or being home every night, getting up with her, going to the gym, and that kind of slowly stopped the longer that we lived in Tennessee.
That was not their lifestyle in Pocahontas. They didn't even social drink. We didn't need that. It was hard to hear because that was not them.
As soon as she went missing, it was Chief McCright's supposition that David, at the very least, had something to do with it.
And we finally just decided that, hey, he's going to be the only person that can really help us in this case to tell us about where his wife might have gone.
If you have a seatbelt right over there.
He came in and gave my guys an interview. That interview didn't go very well, we didn't think.
And I said, so are you going to a costume party, or what are you doing? Are you all having a party? And she said, no, I'm just going to Kathy's. I said, well.
He really wasn't concerned to me about where she might have gone.
Okay, was there any kind of argument or anything then?
No, I just, it was very brief. I wanted to make sure that Ashley was okay and that she was okay, because I questioned Karen about driving. And again, I said, you know, if you can't drive, I will get Ashley. And that was all the conversation was.
Okay. How close did you get to her? Could you tell whether she'd been drinking?
Oh, yeah, you could tell. I could always smell she was drinking, you know.
He was saying, like, you know, that she drank and she was pretty much an alcoholic.
We're both drunk and been drinking, and she was so drunk once that she was had passed out. He was just so drunk that Sharon was drinking so much that.
So that was just, you know, I should, as a husband, be concerned about where is my wife.
If you had to use an estimated guess right now, where do you think she is?
I don't know. I'm so worried about her.
I would say my dad's reaction was he was obviously very worried, but you have to think I was 9 and my sister was 5, so I think he was trying to put on a very brave face for us.
As the search for Karen Swift continues, investigators are reminded of a horrible incident Karen had with a neighbor just months before.
There was an issue where John Hogshooter had poisoned a couple of dogs in the neighborhood. One of the dogs belonged to David and Karen Swift.
Anybody who has a dog and they say their neighbor poisoned their dog, that would certainly be bad blood.
She doesn't hold back. If she feels that she's got something to say, she's going to say it.
A suspect emerges for investigators. As the search for Karen Swift continues, investigators cast a wide net for suspects and leads.
There was a man that she had met concert about 20 miles from Dyersburg across the Mississippi River.
It never grew into a full romantic relationship. It was more of an acquaintance. I think they talked on the phone a few times, maybe sent text messages back a few times, but it never developed any further than that.
His last text to Karen was, she told him that she was at the Halloween party, hanging out with some friends. And his last text was something essentially, great, text me sometime, I'd love to take you out to dinner. And we quickly concluded that, obviously it didn't sound like somebody who was obsessed, and he was ruled out as a suspect.
Found out where he was at the time of her disappearance, and that alibi checked out.
But investigators have another possible lead to follow as they learn of a terrible conflict between Karen Swift and one of her neighbors.
John Hogshuter lived across the road, diagonal from their residence.
Catty corner, probably not more than 150 feet from their home.
Hogshuter had previously had a criminal matter charged against him regarding some sort of issue with one of their dogs.
He had gained some notoriety in the neighborhood. He's kind of a rough around the edges fella, generally.
There was an issue where John Hogshuter had poisoned a couple of dogs in the neighborhood, and one of the dogs belonged to David and Karen Swift.
He put some sort of poison concoction out on his property. One of the Swift's dogs got into the poison and was also sickened. The Swift's dogs did not die.
Well, on October 7th, Karen actually went to this man's house to confront him about her dog being poisoned. John was eventually charged with animal cruelty in that case, and he actually pleaded guilty.
While one neighborhood dog did die from the poisoning, the Swift dog managed to survive after being rushed to the vet and having its stomach pumped. Incident creating bad blood between the neighbors.
Anybody owns a dog and they say their neighbor poisoned their dog, that would certainly be bad blood.
I know Karen and the Hogshuter guy, they knew of the fight they'd had.
She doesn't hold back. She doesn't hold back. Like, if she feels that she's got something to say, she's going to say it.
When she was missing, he became one of the first suspects that the sheriff's department looked at.
Investigators want to talk to John Hogshuter. He'd been poisoning neighborhood dogs, including Karen's. They bring him into this interrogation room, and they have some questions to ask.
John, what I'm going to talk to you about, I'm going to just shoot straight from the hip. Are you aware of what's going on out there where you live?
Yeah, I'm well aware of what's going on.
What I'm trying to do is clear people. And I know that the incident that happened with the dogs out there, I know all about that because of the prior investigator that had been working that case. What I'm trying to do is find out your whereabouts on the 30th on that Saturday.
We interviewed John and asked him that he, of course, we interviewed about the dogs, but we wanted to know, did he know Karen?
His memories of Karen Swift differs from what others have said about the tension between the two of them.
What we want to do is make sure you had no involvement in Karen's disappearance.
I don't know. The only way I even seen a picture of this lady is my wife showed me a picture of her. I was like, oh, is that what she looks like? The only other time I've ever seen her is out on her grass in the summertime from my house.
Had he ever had any contact with Karen? Had he spoken with her? What kind of involvement had he ever had with Karen or David or anybody else in that neighborhood?
Go over and talk to him and sit out on the porch. From that area, from my house or his house, is the only time I've ever seen that lady. Out there in the yard, she's in a bikini. What do you think? Everybody's going to be...
Like, right, I understand.
We're men,
You're a man, you're going to look at her, ain't you?
Yeah, but, just like, yeah, she's in a bikini up there, and that's it. And that's the only time I've ever seen her.
And he said no, he just saw her at one time out in the yard, like a neighbor waving or something to the nature of that.
When did you find out that this woman was missing? When did you know about it?
I would say probably somewhere in the middle of the week.
This past week?
Yeah, or whenever she came up missing, probably in the middle of the week.
Somebody tell you see it on the news, or?
I didn't find out. Maybe it might. Well, I don't have TV, so I don't watch TV, so I don't know how I found out. My wife may have told me, or I don't remember how things because I honestly don't know.
As soon as they started talking to him, he was extremely cooperative.
Where is my truck?
It's locked up in an impound in an enclosed building.
They impounded his vehicle. They got a search warrant, searched his house.
What I'm trying to say, if we want to look at your house, I'd rather for you not to go home before we got there. That's what I'm saying.
Well, my clothes and stuff, I washed my clothes over at my daughter's house, so all my clothes, I'll probably go over there and take a shower and get my clothes for sure. I can't even get in because my keys in the truck. There's a gold key in where the ashtray thing goes right there. There's a gold key. That's the only way I can get in and get my clothes to.
Okay.
He was very relaxed. He wasn't tense about it. It was obvious that, he wasn't nervous. I thought it was a good interview.
There was no evidence in the end that pointed that John Hogshuter had any knowledge of this at all.
But then investigators find Karen Swift's 2 cell phones, almost totally destroyed, near the property of John Hogshuter.
Finding these 2 phones very close to John's property was very concerning for the police.
When we discovered the phones, they were damaged. They were crushed. Somebody might have stoned them and then pitched them there.
So you've got the investigators. They don't know where Karen Swift is. They know she's missing. Her phone was not in her car. They didn't see it around the car, so they start searching for the phone.
So we decided we were going to do a grid from where her car was found back to the house.
So this is where you found the smashed cell phones?
In this area here, the phones were found.
Yeah.
They found 580-something feet from their driveway, from Karen's driveway to this location.
A highway patrolman comes across not 1, but 2 smashed phones.
This is images of them, right? They were shattered.
That phone was shattered before it even went there. Because if you had thrown it in that grass, you would never got this damage to this phone.
But as close to the Swifts' home as the phones are, they're also very close to John Hogshuter's home. That neighbor the Swifts say they had a confrontation with.
Finding those 2 phones within proximity of John Hogshuter's house raises many, many questions for investigators in this case, for obvious reasons.
Investigators found out that Hogshuter was at this church event.
We knew where he was on her day of disappearance, and we were able to establish his alibi.
There was no evidence in the end that pointed that John Hogshuter had any knowledge of this at all.
A thorough investigation was done, and he had alibi witnesses, and we were able to pretty quickly eliminate him as a suspect.
With Hogshuter cleared, the investigation continues. At this point, the most important unanswered question, where is Karen?
Some people just walk away from their lives. It happens all the time. Without a body, they don't know that a crime's been committed.
We constantly relied on getting them to the media. Of course, the sheriff would make press releases, social media. Everybody knew that we were trying to locate her.
There's a landmark in Dyer County, and it's a large cross where you can see it from a good distance. And near that, within a few hundred feet, is a cemetery.
Bledsoe Cemetery is very spread out. Some of the headstones there are over 100 years old, and even older. It's a very rural area. A local pastor and a congregant were in Bledsoe Cemetery on December 10th examining overturned headstones. And as they're surveying this type of damage, they notice a human body part coming out of some kudzu bushes.
Karen Swift has been missing for 6 weeks at this point. The police arrive and head to this nearby area full of kudzu.
Kudzu, they're vines, and kudzu can cover everything. It can cover very large trees and hang down. Kudzu can cover everything that it crawls across, and it crawls across almost everything.
And this is the kudzu that was...
This is the kudzu area. And all of this was in kudzu. Every bit of this was in kudzu.
So it was hiding everything here?
Yes, and the body was found somewhere in this area, maybe near that tree stump.
The body was so badly decomposed it was hard to tell how long it had been there. One thing was very clear, though. There was almost no way that this person just wandered off and somehow found themselves underneath these bushes and then somehow died.
They certainly have an indication that it's a female, but they're not positive that it's Karen Swift.
The body was found with just undergarments on.
Yes.
What does that tell you?
Well, it lets me know that she didn't leave the house dressed like that.
The body is sent to the medical examiner, and dental records make the identification official. It is indeed Karen Swift.
We went to the home to make the death notification, and we told David that we had found Karen, and his very words were, "You found it." You know, and we all, like, "We found your wife, Karen. You found it."
I don't have any audio or statement that backs it up, but I don't know that that statement proves anything. I know that the officer was trying to make something of that, but it's, in my opinion, not an admission or anything other than you found it.
The 44-year-old's body was found near Bledsoe Cemetery, just 2 miles from her Dyer County home. Police identified Swift's body Sunday using dental records. They're not saying how she was murdered. No suspects have been named.
Maybe it was just my dad who sat me down and told me that they found my mom, but I remember my dad being kind of very calm. He explained it in a way of mom's not coming back home, and this is a new reality. And I think that he was trying to say it in the best way possible, but there's not really a best way possible to say that.
It was one of those days where you just go numb and you just cannot believe that this is what it came to and why.
I was very upset when her body was found because of the kids and also David. And he was wondering what in the world could have happened.
I thought maybe, maybe somebody saw her walking and, grabbed her or things like that. But the more I thought about it, I thought there had to be a little bit more to it.
The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. One thing that we were not able to tell was whether there was strangulation involved.
Investigators may not be certain how, but they are now convinced Karen Swift was murdered. As they try to figure out who did it, what did they find under a spare tire? As investigators in Dyersburg look into what is now a murder case, they learn some messy details about Karen and David Swift's marriage. Remember, they had moved here to Tennessee from Pocahontas, Arkansas.
Karen and David met in Pocahontas. They got married in 1989. Karen and David had what could be best described as a tumultuous marriage.
I know that maybe there was some affairs going on in Arkansas.
He ended up having a marital affair with this lady, and a child was born as a result of that affair. And they divorced at that time.
For a lot of couples, that might have been the end. But David and Karen are able to reconcile. They're divorced for only about 7 months when they remarry in 2000 and continue raising their 2 sons together.
And so then David and Karen go on and have their daughters Ashley and Keely. Now, sometime in the mid-2000s, Karen has an affair. David finds out. He forgives her for this. They reportedly move on.
He decided to quickly move the family to Dyersburg.
So it's David and Karen living in the new house with 3 of their 4 younger children. The oldest son was now in college.
They felt like if they didn't get away from the problem that we're having in Arkansas, their marriage would never work. And it did, I mean, they had a loan for quite some time, and then things went from bad to worse.
That's because once the couple moves from Arkansas to Tennessee, more problems spring up. Karen makes new friends, and David and Karen have very different views about what happened next.
It didn't seem like David was happy with those friends, and they weren't especially happy with David either.
It was clear that once she started this friendship with these new friends, that she was moving away from David.
It was me. I heard her sticking out of the house.
He talked to in that police interview.
You know, I've seen nights that she would speed down the drive and Ashley's chasing after her and stuff, not wanting her to leave and go out at night.
It did get to a point where I feel like there was a little bit of shift in my family, and my mom was going out more, which made me start to question why.
As investigators learned details about what was going on, questions are raised about the nature of David's behavior towards Karen, and if his alleged behavior crossed a line.
When David got upset is when Karen would be absent from the house.
He wanted to know where she was.
He would wake up, she would be gone, and he would get out to see where she was at.
David might be following her, but to him, it made perfect sense. He told people he had reason to worry about her and their kids, and his attorney says he thought she might be cheating on him.
If it's late at night and your kids are in bed and you're home after a work day, you might understand why somebody would say, hey, what's going on? Or can I ask you some questions?
I think David just wanted his wife to be at home, where she should be, with him and the kids. She claimed it was controlling. I don't think so.
But Karen let it be known she had had enough. She wanted another divorce.
Karen wanted to file for divorce because she felt David was too controlling of her.
Frankly, if we had to go to court, the inappropriate marital conduct would have been what I would refer to as kind of a stalkish behavior.
But Karen doesn't have enough money of her own to file for divorce, so her good friends, Bill and Kathy Bona, loan her the cash. Not only that, the Bonas say they gave Karen a second phone to use to get around her husband, to talk to her divorce lawyer.
Karen told me that she had a secondary phone, that the number that she was talking to me on was a secondary phone, and she did not want him to know that she was calling and talking to me about a potential divorce.
Investigators understand why they found those two smashed and discarded phones.
She was afraid to be present when he was served. It was a substantial amount of money that she was asking for, so I think that had a big impact on David when he received that.
And in the meantime, the couple continues to live together in the same house.
She was living downstairs. David was sleeping upstairs.
I didn't notice anything different, We all went about our business.
She chose to live in the home. And my take on it was that she wasn't afraid of him. She didn't ask for order or protection because there had been no issues of physical violence.
David continued to say things to Karen, wanting to call the divorce off.
He wasn't happy about the divorce.
To prosecutors, the possible divorce and the issues in the marriage are reaching a boiling point.
I believe that he had the attitude they had reconciled before or had problems before, and perhaps they could just talk through it and continue on with their life.
And he said she wasn't having it. He said there was just no way.
Was it enough of a motive for murder? Investigators had some evidence, including those smashed cell phones found here. And there were those divorce papers that David seemed to have hidden under the spare tire in his car.
This here is not adding up, because if I'm getting a divorce, why do I need to hide them in the car, in the trunk, under a spare tire?
I don't have an explanation. If he had just stuck them there, or if he had inadvertently set them there.
It was only 20 days after she filed for divorce that Karen went missing.
To investigators, it's a lot of smoke. But the truth is, there is simply no hard evidence linking David Swift to the crime. And the District Attorney General in office at the time is not willing to charge him.
I think he was concerned that you only get one chance to try the case.
For more than a decade, the town wonders, is there a killer walking free? Then, in 2022, finally, an arrest. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. And I got a chance to talk to that man from behind bars. Did you ever feel like you had a cloud of suspicion over you? Am I talking with the killer? And another woman emerges with a harrowing account. How would what she says affect the Karen Swift case?
The night that Karen was last seen, she went to a Halloween party.
I mean, the body was here for a month.
Undetected.
They investigated and they investigated, and everyone was like, when are you going to find a suspect?
The story of the same man, but two different women. One of them killed, one of them claiming she was stalked.
And there he was, in my backyard, in the middle of the night. This is too much.
The exclusive interview you'll only see on 2020.
They told me that my dad was got arrested, and in that moment I was like, for what?
How big a deal was this trial in Dyersburg?
This trial was huge.
They didn't compare the fingerprints. They had tunnel vision.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
This is a man I was married to that I shouldn't have been afraid of. And why is this happening?
Today we've intensified our search. We have combed through the areas again.
Karen Swift is a 44-year-old housewife, mother of four, in Dyersburg, Tennessee, and she disappears in October 2011. Her car turns up not far from her house.
Car was locked, secured. There was no signs of foul play in the vehicle.
It was puzzling. I really didn't know. I didn't know what to think.
So after Karen goes missing, the police talk to her husband, David.
I just ordered to come home.
And they learn that there are serious problems in the Swift marriage.
Well, have you filed for divorce?
She filed on the 5th.
6 weeks after she disappears.
Body was found somewhere in this area, maybe near that tree stump.
Karen Swift has been found. Police identified Swift's body using dental records.
For the Dyer County Sheriff's Office, this case turns into a murder investigation. But they don't have enough evidence against Karen Swift's husband, David, or anyone else for that matter, to make an arrest. For more than a decade, there seems to be a question that lingers in the air in this town. Will Karen Swift ever get justice?
That came up.
And in 2018, promising to look the case again, Danny Goodman is elected as the new District Attorney General. Later, the sheriff hands the entire case file over to him.
And we, of course, had a regular caseload. It wasn't something that we could just drop our normal caseload and start going through.
By then, David Swift has left town. He has a whole new life and a new wife, Kelly Essman.
Single Christians? News at ChristianMingle.com.
I met David on Christian Mingle in January of 2014, and we dated for about 2.5 years, and then he moved to Alabama when we got married.
My relationship with my dad during this time period was very good. He made sure that we still had as normal as a childhood as we could, even into our teenage years, you know.
He did start telling me a little bit about Karen and the fact that she had come up missing. He actually asked me to run a background check on him, and the background check comes up clean. You know, none of the news stories showed that he was a person of interest. They didn't say that he was a suspect. It was okay.
I think they had a wonderful relationship. Everybody got along.
It may have started out that way, but Kelly says cracks started to form in the marriage over parenting issues. She says David never wanted to discuss her concerns. Over the years, she says it grew worse and worse.
There were challenges, and with all blended families, there are, you know, and that's where it started going downhill. We both went to therapy. So I finally just decided I can't go back. This is too much. He finally said that he would file for divorce.
But they have no idea that back in Dyersburg, there's been a break in the Karen Swift investigation, thanks to something completely unrelated, the COVID pandemic.
It was actually good for this case because at that time we were not allowed to have in-person court. We were not allowed to have jury trials, so we had a lot of time that was just downtime in the office.
We were alone in the office for, I want to say it was around 6 weeks. Looked at every page that was compiled by the Sheriff's Department.
And that's how the case basically was rejuvenated, and we started back with a lot more detail looking into it.
We just basically came to the same conclusion that, yes, David Swift did it.
We noticed maybe that there were a few things that we would like to have to prosecute the case that were not there.
In particular, they say they want information stored on Karen Swift's cell phones, found smashed not far from her home. After a year of trying, experts can't recover that data, but prosecutors say they do come up with more digital evidence from David Swift's computer.
In the days and weeks after Karen vanished, they found that her husband had been visiting all of these multiple dating sites. Why is David looking at dating sites when she hasn't even been found?
David Swift's lawyer claims other people in the house may have been using that computer and accessing those sites. The prosecutors decide they have enough to take the case to a grand jury. David Swift is indicted.
We would never take a case to trial that we did not feel like we could be successful with prosecution. And at that point, we felt that we could.
An arrest has finally been made in the 2011 murder of Karen Swift.
David Swift was arrested today in Alabama, where he was living with his new wife.
David Swift is charged with premeditated first-degree murder.
He was shocked.
Swift is brought back to Tennessee, where he later pleads not guilty to first and second-degree murder and manslaughter. The sheriff posts on Facebook, "Today is a good day for law enforcement." David was always a suspect because all the evidence points to him.
Certainly it wasn't enough evidence to take him into custody and bring it to trial.
Every rumor, every piece of information that came in, we followed up. No one else had a motive. No one else had the opportunity. And he had all of those things.
They told me that my dad got arrested, and in that moment I was like, for what?
What could they possibly have that they arrested him for? Something that happened so long ago.
I think they just wanted to make an arrest to say we got somebody because they were getting so much flack from people.
There was nothing groundbreaking, no scientific evidence or anything other than what was in the file. I'm not saying that Danny Goodman or his office did anything unethical or improper, but sometimes when pressure is applied or pressure is present in a situation, decisions get made, and we just disagreed with his decision to charge David Swift.
I remember getting that first phone call from him after he was in the jail, and I remember his first words weren't, they weren't about him, they were about us, and that everything was going to be okay.
I spoke to David Swift in a jailhouse interview. David, because this is the moment to clear the record, did you kill your wife?
No, absolutely not. She wasn't afraid of me one bit. We never had no domestics, no violence.
Because of the pending criminal charges, Swift says he couldn't talk about the details of the case, but he denied any violence in the marriage. So you said no domestics, meaning you never hurt Karen?
Never.
Never raised a hand on her?
And on no female, ever. And I sure wouldn't do it to my wife or the mother of my children. But, I loved her. And I still love, her today.
But before he goes on trial, accused of killing Karen, a truly shocking development. New details emerge about David Swift's alleged behavior with another woman, and he faces another criminal charge. Weeks after David Swift is arrested and charged with his wife Karen's murder, he's released after posting a $200,000 bond. But in a truly wild turn of events, Swift's legal troubles follow him home to Alabama, where he faces accusations of stalking, this time from his estranged second wife, Kelly Essman.
I was not afraid of David during the marriage. Towards the end of my marriage, I was not necessarily afraid of him. After I separated, there were periods of time when he would call me, asking me, where are you going? I would tell him Hobby Lobby or, just a Target or whatever. And he always seemed to be calling exactly when I would be going to that place.
After David's arrest, Kelly claims she found proof that she was being followed and filed for an emergency restraining order.
Kelly alleges that in the midst of all of this turmoil with David, that she came into some information that he actually had purchased a tracking device.
And right then I knew. That's how he knew where I was going. So I knew there's a tracking device somewhere on my car. And we did find the tracking device.
Kelly also claims in her motion that David started reaching out to her, sending repeated messages via text and email.
I repeatedly asked him to stop. It started with us trying to figure out the details of the divorce, but it turned into a lot of random harassing emails on various topics.
Kelly files for that emergency restraining order, reporting that she was afraid for her safety, that she believed she may be in danger, and that David's stalking and harassment had become egregious. The judge made no findings on those claims, but the restraining order was granted.
I just wanted him to leave me alone. That's all I wanted. Just leave me alone.
Even with this new wife that he had and got a divorce, his MO was the same, following her around there in Alabama.
Karen and her friends and family said that David often would follow Karen around, that he was monitoring where she was at, that David would call her.
He even told us he followed her to a local store and got in the back of the car.
As for Kelly, she filed a police report after she claimed David's alleged harassment continued. In coordination with Alabama authorities, investigators back in Tennessee check up on what David Swift has been doing.
When he was put on a bond, the judge allowed an ankle monitor to be put on him. That brought to light data showing that he had been to her house on several occasions and followed her.
And the sergeant calls me, and I'm like, how's that possible? That he knew where I was going. And he said that we think he's got a tracking device on your car. And I'm like, again?
Police pour over Kelly's car looking for a tracking device. They don't find one, but Kelly says she does find something chilling on her security camera system, which 2020 was able to obtain.
I pulled up the feed from that night, and there he was, in my backyard. In the middle of the night. He had to drive 40 minutes one way to get to my house. And at one of the times he saw him at my house was in the middle of the night for an hour and a half. When I see the video, that's when I become very confused, fearful. And why is this happening? Why is he doing it? I didn't give him any reason to. This is a man I was married to. That I shouldn't have been afraid of.
David's charged with felony stalking in Alabama, and his bond in the Karen Johnson Swift murder case was revoked.
Things moved pretty quickly after that. After they got the indictment, they arrested David Swift. There are pictures of him getting in the car.
With his bond revoked, Swift is brought into custody and sent to Tennessee.
He's been charged with stalking down there. They're going to handle those charges once we dissolve this case here.
David Swift has yet to enter a plea to the stalking charge. His lawyer handling the case hasn't responded to 2020's request for comment. With Swift sitting in jail, attention turns back to his fast-approaching trial for Karen's murder. The case is big news in a small town, and both the prosecution and the defense are about to pull back the curtain on the Swifts' private lives.
Did anyone have no clothes on in the hot tub?
What exactly was going on at those hot tub parties? And what do they have to do with Karen's case?
A man accused of killing his wife more than a decade ago is back in Tennessee. We'll bring you inside of the courtroom as both sides prepare for trial.
News of David Swift's trial puts Dyersburg on the map in a way locals have never seen.
When there was finally an arrest in Karen's case, you had TV crews, newsprint media, all these people flooding in to Dyersburg.
How big a deal was this trial in Dyersburg?
This trial was huge. It was high profile. It's been the #1 trial of public interest in Dyersburg.
Interestingly, Karen Swift's murder trial doesn't take place here in Dyer County, Tennessee. Instead, a judge issues a change of venue, and David Swift is tried for murder 50 miles from here in Weakley County, Tennessee. As opening statements begin, the prosecution makes it clear that there is no smoking gun against David Swift.
You're not going to see fingerprint analysis. You're not going to see ballistic testing. We will, however, give you several pieces of a puzzle. And when we get through giving you all of those, we think that we're going to have a complete picture. We knew that a jury would want to see some type of weapon that was used for the murder. And it was just, we were never going to have that in this case.
But the prosecution lays out their theory that David Swift didn't actually need a weapon.
We submit that the defendant dragged her to the garage. Once inside the garage, the defendant stomped Karen on her head with such violence that it caved her skull in.
I was shocked when I heard that because I had not heard that before, and I'm like, okay, we'll see the evidence of that.
The autopsy showed that there was starburst fracturing on the left side, which indicated that her head was against something solid and then was struck from the other side. And our theory is that solid object was the concrete in the garage.
The defense counters the investigators never found any evidence in the garage to back up this theory.
So you actually walked around the garage and looked at it when you first went out there with Mr. Swift?
Yes, sir.
All right. You didn't see any blood or the smell of strong bleach, did you?
I did not.
The prosecution then switches gears to focus on Karen's abandoned car. Remember, investigators say that her tire appeared to have been deliberately punctured.
The flat tire, I think, is one of the more significant pieces of the puzzle in this case.
One thing I did observe was a screw that was in groove number 3. The screw was slightly below the tread surface.
Does that have any significance to you in your examination?
Yes. When an object punctures the tire in the tread area, it will actually rebound as it goes through the tire because of the elastic nature and the structure of the tire.
Could you imagine a situation where a screw entered the tire in service like this, where it ran over an object, perhaps a pebble or a stone, that could have forced the screw head beneath the tread surface?
Well, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I would say extremely improbable.
It was their contention that the tire was intentionally deflated as a ruse to make people believe that Karen had actually suffered from a flat tire, and that's why her car was there, when in fact that was not the case.
But the defense brings in their own expert, who testifies that the screw could have accidentally punctured that tire.
There's other vehicles could kick up screws or nails. You know, say you're following a construction vehicle and some are on the back of the trailer and they bounce off and you just happen to be behind it. Who knows what angle it's going to strike your tire at as you're going down the roadway.
My expert actually did test on a light tire on a similar wheel and, tried to recreate that and explained it to the jury. And I think the jury has to decide which they believe.
The prosecution also calls Karen's friends, Bill and Kathy Bona, to the stand to testify about how they viewed Karen and David's relationship.
She finally started taking action when she started getting the confidence to say, I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. And the controlling and accusations, she was ready to be done with the marriage because she needed to get out.
The defense argues that Karen had full control of everything she did.
She did the behavior she wanted to, and that's just a reality. And as we move on closer to the time she got a divorce, she would come and go as she wished.
Prosecution asks the Bonas about Kathy's 40th birthday celebration, where they hosted an after party with a group of their friends, which included the use of their hot tub. The Bonas testify that this party led to a confrontation with David Swift.
How were people dressed?
Some people had swimsuits, a couple people did not.
Would you say they did not? Did they have anything on?
No.
They were nude? Yes. Do you know if Miss Swift was in the hot tub?
She was, yes. I don't remember specifically seeing her, but she enjoyed being in the hot tub when she came over, in the wintertime when it was cold, so I'm sure she was.
Was Mr. Swift present that night?
He wasn't at first, and he wasn't invited, and he wasn't welcome. Mr. Swift burst into the door, there and startled me, and I asked where Karen was.
What was his demeanor at that time?
He was agitated, I would say, but I would also say he caught me off guard. I thought, I don't like this, and I went to get out of the chair to go, ask him to leave, basically, and he came down the stairs and left.
How did he appear when he came down, as far as his attitude and demeanor?
He came down the stairs and left abruptly and left through the door, quickly enough where I couldn't even really get a word in edgewise.
The prosecution plays David's full police interview in court, where he confirmed that he would sometimes follow Karen to the Bona's house.
Karen started sneaking out of the house, and she would go to be with Kathy and Bill.
And when you say go to be with them, you go to party with them,
go party, and they get in the hot tub in the backyard.
There was a lot of information about the hot tub parties and all of that, so it kind of verified the rumors that were going around that something somewhat wild was going on.
And there is key testimony still ahead, as one emotional witness makes waves.
Okay, call you next witness. Ashley Swift.
And David's own daughter prepares to testify at her father's trial. What will she say when she takes the stand? Inside the Weakley County Courthouse, attorney Daniel Taylor dives into one of the most memorable cases of his career.
I've been a trial lawyer for 32 years, and it's the most media attention on any particular case that I've had. This is 2011. After all those years, there's been no scientific breakthrough or anything. There's been nothing new that's come in or anything. After all this time, there was a charge.
The defense contends that the reason David would follow Karen was because he was worried about what was going on at those hot tub parties.
There were issues about conduct and things that were going on, adult parties, things about hot tub parties, and just some things that maybe some others considered not appropriate.
They call her friend, Robin Alford, who testifies that she saw Karen passed out at Kathy Bona's birthday party.
Did you see Karen Swift leave the hot tub, go into the house?
I did. I witnessed her get up. She looked to me as if she was hot and woozy kind of feeling when I walked in, and I witnessed her laying on the floor.
Did you, were you aware whether or not, when you first met the Swifts, that they drank alcohol or not?
Karen never drank before she came to Dyersburg, never. And I don't think that she could handle her alcohol at all.
The defense points out that in his police interview, David did express concern for Karen's welfare.
I'd have to go get her home, they call me. And so I was always concerned and worried about her. There was several times I found her in compromising situations. And I did get upset, and I said, Karen, please, why are you doing this?
The defense was simple. David Swift did not kill Karen Swift. They said it could have been a random act by somebody who was just passing by, either in a car or on foot.
They didn't compare the fingerprints. They just tested David Swift. They had tunnel vision.
The defense also argues that David had a serious knee injury affecting his mobility, so he wouldn't have been physically able to dispose of Karen's body.
They said he had this injured leg, so he could not have possibly picked her up and placed her in the cemetery.
Did you notice anything about his leg or how he was walking?
He had a knee brace on, and he had crutches.
Multiple witnesses for the prosecution dispute the seriousness of David's knee injury.
Was he using crutches?
I never seen crutches on Saturday.
Did he appear to be injured in any way?
You could see him using his crutches while he was talking, but after he got done talking and they went in the house, he just walked like he didn't need crutches anymore. I thought that was strange.
Even if he is faking it, it's still there's a visual there. The jury is repeatedly seeing people get on the stand and say, yes, I saw him on these crutches. Yes, I saw him on these crutches.
The defense also disagrees with the prosecution's account of what happened inside the Swift home on the night of Karen's murder.
So part of the prosecution's theory of the case was that David comes into Karen's room, takes Ashley, the daughter, out of the bed and goes and puts her in bed with the sister Keeley. He returns to the room and Karen is either asleep or in a very incapacitated state, and then something happens where he ends her life.
Then the defense calls an essential witness to challenge that theory.
Would you tell everybody your name?
Ashley Swift. I was nervous to go on the stand, and they decided to call me early. And so in that moment, I did freak out a little bit, just because I hadn't mentally prepared myself.
Ashley, who was only 9 years old when she saw her mom for the last time, describes what she remembers about the hours before Karen disappeared.
You're not used to testifying, so let me just ask you a few things, okay?
Okay.
When your mother picked you up, did she pick you up in her car?
She did.
And where did y'all go after that?
We went home, back to our house where my sister and my dad were.
And do you recall getting out of the car or going to the house? Or do you recall everything about that night?
Yeah, we came into the house and we went to sleep in her bedroom. I didn't really prepare for trial. Whatever was asked was what was asked, and however I answered was however I answered, and I told the truth in everything that I said.
And Ashley testifies that it wasn't her father who moved her from the bed that fateful night.
Oh, I know it was my mother.
How do you know that?
It's instinct to know your mother versus somebody else. You have that bond with that person and you know who it is.
But you didn't actually see her.
No, but I felt her. There were some times during my testimony where they were trying to, I think, trick me into thinking that what I felt and knew was something else, and I made sure to own that. It was my testimony.
So you actually don't know for sure then, do you?
I mean, I have a pretty good instinct to feel what my mother feels like.
Seeing his oldest daughter take the stand becomes a visibly emotional ordeal for David.
I know that it was physically tough, and he knew it was difficult being asked questions.
And finally, after 2 weeks of heated exchanges and moving testimony, there are fireworks inside the jury room where lines are drawn in the sand.
It was divided pretty much down the middle.
It was basically the guys against the girls.
As the courtroom holds its breath for a verdict. After 6 days of emotionally charged testimony in David Swift's murder trial, it was time for the lawyers on both sides to make their final plea to the jury.
Karen and David Swift's marriage ended sometime around 3:30 a.m. on October 30th, 2011. Sadly, it didn't end the way Karen had envisioned it might when she filed for divorce earlier that month from David. My job in closing argument was to convince the jury that there was only one person that could have done this, and that's what I attempted to thread all the evidence together and present them with a coherent theory of what happened that evening. There was only one person in the planet that could have killed Karen Swift, and it was David.
How do you think the prosecution did in presenting its case to the jurors?
I think that General Goodman had a very, very difficult case. It was an inherited case. It was very old evidence. I think that he did the absolute best that he could to try to bring justice to Karen Swift.
The prosecutor said that he would put the puzzle together, but the puzzle was incomplete. And so that's exactly what I argued, and that his version of the offense and what he claimed happened was incorrect or inconsistent with what was proven. There is no proof to support the state's theory in this case. You have heard all of my questions. You have heard all of the witnesses. The state said that this was a puzzle that they would put together for a complete picture. There is no complete picture.
In order to return a verdict, it is necessary that each juror agree thereto. Your verdict must be unanimous.
As it was going to the jury, we all kind of sat around and a bunch of family friends showed up. We were sitting there trying to figure out, what if the jury's saying this? What if they're saying that? But we really didn't know what was going on in that jury room.
We started deliberating. Why don't you think he's guilty? Why do you think he's guilty? We took an initial vote just to see where everybody was, and it was divided pretty much down the middle.
It was basically the guys against the girls.
According to juror David Liggins, some of those male jurors felt there just wasn't enough evidence to convict David Swift.
If you stomp somebody's head on concrete good enough to fracture her skull like it was fractured and busted, and then he can beat every law enforcement and science in the state, I don't believe that's possible this day and time. No physical evidence.
But for other jurors, they say David Swift's behavior towards Karen couldn't be ignored.
In my heart, I really thought he did something when he knew where she was at and what she was doing, because he was following her. That made me think that yes, he did something.
As the jury was deliberating, things were very tense, and you could sense the tension minute by minute.
I actually was not surprised that the jury was deliberating as long as they did. Anytime you have a circumstantial case, you're going to have a lot of discussions. You're going to have a lot of opinions.
When the jury went, it was tense on both sides. Both sides were just waiting. You have no choice other than to talk to your client, talk to his family. And so he obviously was nervous, and it could mean either him going home or either him staying, in custody.
After hours of fruitless deliberations, the jury tells the judge they were unable to reach a decision. He instructs them to keep trying.
After 10, 11 hours, you're getting tired.
Mentally exhausted. Everybody was so tired.
They couldn't reach a decision. So they stayed and they went home. And then they came back.
It got a little heated, but anytime you got difference of opinions, it's eventually going to get a little heated.
Finally, after 2 days of deliberation, the jury announces it has reached a decision.
When we walked back in there, everybody was looking, of course. They're going to see if they can tell whether you voted not guilty or guilty. Anybody would have voted like we did. But I do remember looking out in the gallery.
I saw one lady, she was shaking, and the longer it took, it was obvious to me that she was becoming more nervous, and this was pretty much the scene inside the courthouse.
I just prayed we had done the right thing.
Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict in this case?
After 2 days of grueling deliberation, the jury has come back in David Swift's murder trial.
Has the jury reached a verdict in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Do you feel like that it is likely that the jury, on continued deliberations, will reach a verdict?
No, sir.
I think the best word to describe what happened as the verdicts were being read was shock.
Does the jury agree on the highest level of offense that the defendant is either guilty or not guilty?
Yes.
What is the verdict in that?
Not guilty.
The jury came back not guilty on first-degree murder, not guilty on second-degree murder, and they were hung on voluntary manslaughter.
Do you all believe that the jury is hopelessly deadlocked with respect to the charge of voluntary manslaughter? I see everybody nodding their head yes.
I was just sitting there in the chair. I was just kind of I was like, I can't believe this. We spent all this time presenting the facts, and apparently they just didn't get it. The jury didn't get it.
The first two officers on the scene said that they did walk into the garage that day. I'm sorry, you could smell bleach if he had bleach in there. You could see the blood if he ain't cleaned it up yet. When they gave me a scenario, that's where he'd done it. And then they can't find nothing. That ended the case for me.
I think it stopped at manslaughter because I felt like he did something in my heart. I really thought he did something.
When the verdict came in, your reaction?
Honestly, I really was not surprised. Reasonable doubt was everywhere.
I think the way that the prosecution laid it out was the only person that could have done it was David Swift. They didn't present proof that said that it was David Swift. If I removed myself and my knowledge of the case, and I was an independent person, I would have had to have rendered a verdict of not guilty.
One detail that the prosecution wasn't allowed to introduce at trial, David's indictment for allegedly stalking his second wife, Kelly. But some jurors say hearing about that accusation wouldn't have made a difference.
The only thing, in my opinion, that would have changed my outcome was the scenario the prosecution gave. Yes, that woman was beat to death, but they can't convince me that David done it.
Let me take you to the penultimate moment, which is, what was it like to hear the jury say not guilty?
Man, it was great. I thought, finally, things overwhelming.
Although he was acquitted of murdering Karen, David Swift's legal ordeal is far from over. He's still facing that charge of stalking his second wife and remains in jail as he faces retrial on that voluntary manslaughter charge.
I'm disappointed that the jury didn't reach a decision. I thought they should as to all the offenses. And that's the jury system. And that's why we'll have a retrial.
We were confident going into the first trial. We're equally confident for a second trial. And I think that it's something that we can't give up on. It's just something that we have an obligation to do.
I'm not really sure what you expect to get out of a retrial when we've already seen the presentation of all this evidence before, and everybody has pretty much already formed a decision on it.
And today, 13 years after her mother disappeared, Ashley Swift, Karen and David's daughter, still steadfastly believes in her father's innocence.
Moving forward, I'm not exactly 100% sure what's going to happen. I hope that we can get my dad home soon. He is currently sitting in jail for something that, he shouldn't even be in jail for.
David has missed out on a lot of special things. He has missed the birth of a grandchild, his daughter's graduation from dental hygiene school, his oldest daughter, Ashley. He has missed Keely graduating high school.
What does justice for Karen Swift look like?
I think that in a situation like this, I think that we have to unfortunately reconcile with the fact that there may not be justice.
I will always remember Karen, and I think everybody should remember Karen by her love for children, that she was a great mother and she was a great friend.
I think one of the things I want people to know about my mom is she's a very caring and nurturing person, and she would do anything for any of us kids or my dad. I would love to have my dad around again and, really fight for justice for my mom.
That's our program for tonight. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
Nikki was not answering the door, was not answering the phone.
When she doesn't appear, people are surprised. She's usually very reliable.
I think it was just a shock because you don't expect that to sort of happen where you live.
Just unbelievable. It's like you're in a movie. It's not even happening to you.
Murder? What do you mean, murder?
When the police reviewed the CCTV footage, they saw a person entering the flats. It's chilling. She's on her way to kill.
Letchworth, England's first garden city, is a rural town situated north of Hertfordshire.
Letchworth was founded by Ebenezer Howard at the start of the 20th century. He wanted people to move out of cramped conditions in places like London and come and live in the countryside.
Letchworth, for somewhere to live, is lovely. It's welcoming. It's rural, but within easy reach of both Cambridge and London. I'm getting older, but I still find it's a very safe place to walk around. I just feel it's a very comfy place to live.
I think people in Letchworth are really friendly. Often if you walk in, they'll say hello.
Life in Letchworth's really good. Everybody's very friendly, can be very vibrant for the summer months. Very nice place.
Letchworth is a lovely place to live. Quiet, very nice, no trouble at all. Wouldn't live anywhere else. Beautiful place.
And for 26-year-old carer Nikki Collingbourne, it was the perfect place to live and work while remaining nearby to her family.
We were like best friends, really. Not so much, we used to make a joke about her being my auntie because she was younger than me, but we were just like really close friends, like sisters, really, because we were of a similar age.
She always wanted children of her own, and I think that made her very childlike in a good way. And she worked with children as well, so.
Because she's so good with kids, like, amazing, like, just seeing family, anyone's children, even their friends' kids she was brilliant with. So obviously as I started having my children, she became quite involved, and we'd often spend weekends together away, with kids, without kids. She's just such a kind person.
Nikki was very funny, caring and loving. Everything about her. She was just a wonderful person. She'd drop anything to do anything for anybody.
Nikki's close family circle depended on her in their daily lives, and that included helping her mum and taking her to and from hospital appointments. But all that was about to change.
Nikki's mother was very ill. She was being treated in the Lister Hospital in Stevenage, which is about 7 miles away. Nikki's due to collect her, and when she doesn't appear, people are surprised.
Nikki usually does all the running around, goes and picks her mum up, make sure she's got everything, and she had not answered her calls, which was obviously very unlike Nikki.
Nikki would never let anybody down on an appointment, never, unless it was absolute emergency.
By the afternoon, I was a bit really worried, so I just sent her a text, and I just said, Nikki, if you need me, I'm here, blah, blah, and yeah. The next thing I know, her mum had rung me and said, have you seen Nikki? She hasn't turned up to pick me up from hospital, and I instantly knew. I knew something was not right. I went down, the car was there, so I knew she was in the flat. Shouted through the letterbox, like Leanne stuff was shouting through the letterbox, no response. But I know that Nikki was very down and depressed about her mum being poorly, and she was really worried something was going to happen to her. And sometimes Nikki was the type of person that does need to be just left alone for a little while. Very unusual for her not to contact people. So I thought, you know what, we'll give it a night.
But the next day, there is still no word from Nikki.
She's usually very reliable. Her family trust her, they rely on her. So they're concerned. Her half-sister obtains a spare key to her flat and goes round with other members of the family.
With Nikki not responding, her family let themselves into the flat. But nothing could prepare them for what they would find.
They walked into the kitchen, and in front of them, they saw Nikki on the floor in a pool of blood. Her left wrist had been slit.
They found Nikki laying on the floor, her face up, with, there was just like a massive congealed blood running from Nikki's head. And yeah, you could see that she was dead.
Family members went down to her flat to see if she was okay, and obviously discovered her body. At that point, they immediately called the police.
My daughter phoned me up hysterical, saying, Nikki's dead, there's blood everywhere. And I just went hysterical on the phone, and then I was in shock.
Police immediately arrive on the scene, met by a gruesome sight.
In this case, the scene investigation officer will be looking to preserve that scene, preserving and securing evidence.
Nikki is laying on the floor of her kitchen, fragments of a ceramic chicken-shaped pot surrounding her. A severe cut is across her wrist. Could she have had an accident? Or taken her own life?
It was so bizarre, and there didn't seem to be any particular reason for it.
It was suspected that Nikki had took her own life, but I knew that that wasn't the case. She'd never done that. She loved life too much. She would never have left her mum and her family.
As Nikki's body is taken for a post-mortem, the tragic news travels fast through the close-knit community, alerting the local press to the scene.
When the police arrived, the area was cordoned off. There were police cars everywhere, officers in white suits from the forensic department carrying out checks. Local people at the shops and the flats were shocked by what had gone on.
It's not something you hear about in, the area that you live. It's not something you expect on your doorstep.
She was so friendly with everybody around here. It was sad when we heard about what happened to her. She wouldn't hurt anybody. She was the most kindest person I'd ever known. It was devastating news.
When the post-mortem report comes in, the results are not clear-cut.
From the pathology reports, there's no one single injury that led to Nikki's death. It was inconclusive.
But the results do reveal Nikki's skull had been fractured. And it seems the broken ceramic chicken-shaped dish which had surrounded her body was involved.
So the pathologist said that the chicken dish would have been picked up by two hands and used with considerable force. Although it wasn't enough to fracture Nikki's skull, it was certainly enough to render her unconscious.
The police quickly realised that somebody else had been involved.
The pathologists have concluded that she died because of the violent actions of a third party.
No one could have predicted that this was going to happen. We just couldn't believe it. It was like it wasn't even happening to us.
With the outcome from the post-mortem now in, the inquiry into Nikki's death changes focus. In Letchworth, results from the post-mortem on 26-year-old Nikki Collingbourne has changed the course of the investigation.
They walked into the kitchen, and in front of them, they saw Nikki on the floor in a pool of blood. Her left wrist had been slit.
Chicken dish would have been picked up by two hands and used with considerable force. It certainly was enough to render her unconscious.
With a murder investigation now underway, police break the news to her grieving family.
I was at work. I got a phone call from my boyfriend at the time, and he just said, "You need to get home right now." He goes, "I can't really tell you anything. I don't want to tell you right now." But I knew, and I was so panicky. When I got there, there was police everywhere. It was, not very good. And my children were there crying. My mum was there crying. And I was like, "Murder? What do you mean, murder?" I honestly didn't think, even in that moment, that it was murder.
Just unbelievable. It's like you're in a movie. It's not even happening to you. Yeah, everyone was just shocked, devastated.
News that Nikki's death is now being treated as a murder quickly spreads around the area.
When I first heard about the murder, I think it was just generally shock, because you don't expect that to sort of happen where you live.
I was really amazed, really surprised. It's a really safe area, and it really shocked me.
It took a long, long time to take it in. We knew the relatives who knew them, and so sorry for the family,
With family and locals still trying to come to terms with the murder, the bigger question being asked is who would want to harm Nikki?
She works with children. That was just what she wanted to do for her whole life. Just work with children, be a mum, and, she had a great relationship with everyone.
I loved everything about Nikki. Everything. She was just a beautiful person. There's nothing she wouldn't do for you. She'd cheer you up. She'd get you motivated, because I don't go out a lot. She'd come in, she'd do stuff for me. She's like the little sister I never had.
Her family was her life. And we saw her almost all the time. I'd open my door, my son would be gone into her house, and I wouldn't see him for days. Just to text her to make sure, is my son okay? And she's like, "Yeah, no need to worry, he's here." She literally brought so much joy to anybody that met her, really. She just kept us all together. She was the glue that kept both sides of the family together, really. She was just a really amazing, one of those people that you meet and you're like, wow, she was put on this earth just to care for people. She was just amazing.
I was honestly shocked when I found out who the victim was. So I honestly had no idea why anybody would want to harm her.
With no clues as to who would want to harm Nikki, forensic officers take a closer look at her flat, turning the block into a major crime scene.
Police officers in white suits were gathering vital forensic evidence. The whole scene had been cordoned off. It was a major crime in what was usually a quiet area.
A murderer will either leave something at the scene or take something away from the scene, so we're looking to preserve and secure that evidence. And that evidence will be DNA, fingerprints, blood, hair, fibres, etc., so that they're looking for the physical evidence. A forensic examination of the scene was carried out, and DNA, essentially blood, was found on the broken pieces of the chicken pot.
While the evidence is sent off to the laboratory for examination, further searching at Nikki's home uncovers something concerning.
A letter was found in Nikki's flat in which she'd written to her GP saying she was absolutely terrified.
The letter throws up more questions. Who could Nikki have been afraid of? And could this person be behind her untimely death?
Nikki unfortunately got a lot of threats, and Nikki was terrified. I've never ever known anyone so absolutely terrified. I remember one night she barricaded her door up. Yeah, she was very withdrawn. She was just scared.
Police need to piece together Nikki's last known movements, including trying to ascertain whether anyone visited her.
There was no sign of a forced entry, in the sense of, for example, the door having been levered or a broken window or anything of that kind. The only way that you could get to it was quite secure, was by entering the door to the common parts of the purpose-built block, and then going up the stairs and onto the landing and approaching the door of Nikki's flat.
So we're looking at a murder investigation. The priorities at the scene could be different for different murders. For example, a killer has to have got there and then gone away from the scene. So it could be fast track, looking at the CCTV. It could be speaking to family members, or it could be house to house because somebody could have seen the killer leaving the scene.
All of the entrance and the landing on the first floor were covered by CCTV cameras, and as it happens, the system had been recently improved, and once the police got access to the CCTV, they recovered a whole series of images of events occurring at the door of the flat between the Sunday evening when Nikki returned home and the Tuesday evening when members of her family finally let themselves in.
After accessing the CCTV footage, police spend hours trawling through the images.
When the police reviewed the CCTV footage, they saw a person entering the flats. That person was wearing a high-vis jacket.
The CCTV shows a figure in a ginger curly wig, large frame glasses, with a King Charles I beard and a high-vis jacket, lumbering along the corridor.
The person is seen entering the flats just before 8:30 a.m. on Monday the 23rd of May and leaving just before noon, corresponding with the pathologist's time of death.
That person immediately becomes a person of interest because of the time they entered and left the flats. But also the CCTV showed that that person went to Nikki's door.
Who is the person on CCTV wearing a high-vis? Could it be a workman or a boyfriend?
When you got the CCTV, you don't know who that is. However, you look into the victim and their background, and if you find out how a victim lived, you may find out how they died.
She didn't have a boyfriend, she was waiting for that one special person.
With police still at a loss, they turned to those close to Nikki.
The police called me up and asked me to go into the station to help them with something. But after I got off the phone to them, I was like, a bit like, well, I was the last person to see Nikki. Like, all these thoughts were, you don't even think you're going to think like that, but all these thoughts were running through my mind. I thought, I was the last person to see her, I was the last person to talk to her. What if they think it was me?
Me and Jodie had been called up on the Thursday or Friday by the police at the headquarters in Welling, and they said, oh, would you and Jodie, we want just you and Jodie, come and view some pictures for us. And we were like, oh, okay. And we were like, well, we don't really know anyone around here. We only know our family, so I don't know what we're going to find. Like, we just didn't know what we was going to expect.
So me and obviously Leanne drove there, and we got there and they separated us both. And they basically took Leanne into a room, and then took me into a room, and I didn't quite know what I was here to do. And they just like, we need to show you some CCTV images. Just say what you think, if you know the person, say.
And we kind of sat in this room and had a camera on us. I filmed the whole thing of me watching video footage of someone in a high-vis.
I honestly felt like passing out when I see it, like within 3 seconds of watching the clip. I actually had to stop halfway through watching it. I was in such shock. I was crying, screaming, I couldn't believe it.
And I was like, I don't even think that's a man. I think that's a female dressed up as a man. I knew straight away that Jodie was going to identify her.
I just knew that it was a Ron.
The murder investigation into the death of Nikki Collingbourne has thrown up a suspect. a man seen entering Nikki's flat at the time of her death. But when CCTV is examined closely, family members recognise the person. And it's not a man.
When I see that first image of her dressed up the way she was, it just all hit me. I just knew that it was Yvonne.
But who is Yvonne?
So Nikki and Yvonne were sisters. There's a big age gap between them, about 27 years.
I first met Yvonne when I was dating her brother Paul, who obviously I later married, and we became friends. We used to go to the pub. Yvonne went to live in America, and basically I didn't have anything to do with Yvonne for years. She was estranged from the family.
Having moved to the US in the early 1990s, and due to their age gap, Yvonne and Nikki had not grown up together. But keen to get to know her half-sister, Nikki moved to America.
I did meet her when I went to America a couple of times. I kind of had my reservations about her, and she's quite in your face when she talks. She makes everything about her. She's quite manipulative.
She was quite boisterous. She would certainly punch you if she wouldn't think twice about it.
Despite the family's reservations, in 2015, when Yvonne came to visit family in the UK from the US, Nikki repaid the favour, letting her sister move in with her.
Everyone was just shocked to see her back in the UK, but at first we were happy to see her because she's part of the family.
The pair living together came as a surprise to family, since Nikki had shared something with them on her return to the UK.
Yvonne and Nikki's relationship was very strained when she came back because they'd had a big fallout before Nikki came back, and then obviously Yvonne followed about, I think it was a year later, but Nikki forgave her and they made it up, and that's how she ended up living with Nikki.
With Yvonne Kaler having been identified as the person in the CCTV, and with her being deemed the last person to see Nikki, and therefore a suspect, police need to ascertain what could have gone wrong in their relationship.
I have no doubt in my mind that Yvonne was jealous of Nikki and their relationship that she had over the years with their dad. Yvonne was very jealous of the relationship that Nikki had with their dad because she obviously lived in America and Nikki lived in England and she grew up with her dad, and I suppose, you know, she was in with all of us lot, and Yvonne didn't have that relationship with us. We only had that over the internet. Because obviously Nikki felt obliged to have Yvonne there because they were sisters, and Nikki was very much a family person. Yvonne definitely manipulated her and used the fact that they were sisters.
Nikki and Yvonne Kaler's relationship was anything other than tranquil. It was difficult and tempestuous.
But could this strained relationship between the half-sisters have led to Nikki's death? In order to piece the puzzle together, police need to ask some questions. So make a decision.
Yvonne Kaler was arrested on the 25th of May, 2016. Once we've got the suspect in custody, and we believe that is the killer, the clock is ticking. So we've got to do everything we can to get enough evidence for the CPS to authorise a charge. Because certainly in this case, if Yvonne Kaler hadn't been bailed, she was a risk to other people out there.
Because obviously they had Yvonne, they'd arrested her for Nikki's murder, but they had no evidence to hold her. They had this CCTV image, and DNA takes time to come back, so they couldn't actually hold her.
With Yvonne in custody, police trawl her mobile phone and laptop and discover she had been searching for flights.
The police discovered she was planning to drive to Spain and then fly out to the United States to meet her husband.
She was planning to flee the jurisdiction and fly back to America. Those arrangements had, as it were, begun in the immediate aftermath of Nikki Bourne's death.
She was a flight risk. We know she was planning to go back to the USA.
Her mobile phone revealed she'd even sent messages after news of Nikki's murder broke.
Yvonne Kaler was pretending to be as concerned and upset as every other member of Nikki's family. She sent a message to her husband in the United States saying, "Pray for Nikki, as I will."
While piecing together Yvonne's movements in the days leading up to Nikki's murder, further revelations come to light.
She had visited the costume shop where she acquired the wig and the disguise and the false beard the preceding week. So there'd been clearly an element of planning about all of this.
We believe she's planned this murder meticulously, so she's an extreme danger to the public out there.
Police build their evidence against Yvonne Kaler, but at this stage it's purely circumstantial. So the focus turns to questioning Yvonne while in custody.
Yvonne, do you recognise the person in that CCTV?
No, look, bow-legged, fat, bow-legged to me.
Even though it could be clear that the person on the CCTV is Yvonne, Yvonne is denying that that is her, and that is not enough on its own to convict somebody of murder.
It was almost like it was a joke. Like she had padded herself up with some sort of padding, and she had a high vis on, a moustache. It looked like she'd bought in a joke shop, a wig, and a goatee. And it was the most surreal. I can't to this day even look at it. Like, I literally can't believe the way she dressed up and how she thought she was going to get away with that, because you can clearly see that that is her.
When I heard that Yvonne had dressed up to get into the flat, I was just like, never have even thought of anything like that.
Well, I couldn't do it with a fake beard.
Do you own a fake beard?
No, I don't own a fake beard.
Do you own a fake wig?
No, I don't own a fake wig.
By denying her presence on the CCTV, Yvonne was trying to achieve the smoke and mirrors that she'd of her plan. She wanted the police to believe that this was a man, and in fact, in her police interview, she tells the police officer that she thought it was a man who was bow-legged. Again, this was just part of her callous plan.
I'm fat, but I'm not bow-legged. I look like a man to me. I couldn't see his face.
What do you think looked like a man?
Just what they're wearing look like a dude.
Then there is a breakthrough in the case. Results have come back from the forensic lab, which had been analysing the blood found on the broken chicken pot.
The breaking of the casserole pot, at the moment that it was used to strike her, had quite clearly cut the hands of the person who was holding it at the time, because on some of those ceramic pieces were found blood, the DNA of which did not match Nikki Collingbourne, but which did match that of Yvonne Kaler.
I knew in my mind Yvonne has murdered Nikki. I just knew.
Yvonne Kaler was quickly charged with murder.
Well, of course
Why would you that's me?
Because to me, it looks like a person's wearing a wig and a beard.
I don't know about a wig, but they look like they had a beard.
We suspect that person has murdered your sister.
Well, it ain't me, because I ain't going to be able to push on that door like that.
You said, we believe it's you. You said it's not you.
I know, you can't believe you think it's me.
Having been charged with the murder of Nikki Collingbourne, Yvonne Kaler maintains her innocence, but is remanded in custody until a trial date is set. Nikki's body is released, so she can finally be laid to rest.
Nikki was loved by so many people. At a funeral, there were so many people there that obviously I knew, and so many people had travelled from all over to come to her funeral. They'd all bought pictures of her, like at the nursery with the kids, and they all put it on a big board, and it was lovely.
But the funeral brings more devastating news for the family.
Nikki's mum, Rena, it destroyed her. She died a day before the funeral. She didn't even get to bury her daughter.
With overwhelming evidence stacking against her, Yvonne Kaler has been charged with the murder of Nikki Collingbourne. Having pleaded not guilty, Kaler's trial begins at Luton Crown Court.
The main issue in the case was the identity of the person who had been captured on the CCTV forcing their way in. Because Yvonne Kaler's defence to the charge of murder was a perfectly simple one. It wasn't me and I was elsewhere at the time.
As the case opens, Nikki's family take to the stand.
I think I was one of the first people to give evidence, so I couldn't actually go and sit in the gallery until I'd given my evidence. I just remember when I did go in, obviously the very first person I did see was Yvonne. She was just smirking, trying to make me feel uncomfortable.
And they reveal a major fallout between Nikki and her half-sister Yvonne when the latter came to the UK to visit family for a few months.
Yvonne had been at Nikki's for a few months. They'd had a few bad days, a couple of little rows, and either Yvonne or Nikki would end up in my mum's house, which is where we resided at the time. And, we could kind of see the tension, getting more. So I think they lived together for a very short length of time, like 5 months. But in that 5 months, a lot happened. Yvonne was literally trying to manipulate Nikki into doing everything for her. It was like she was using Nikki, basically. She was just using her. So when Nikki told us that she was going to evict Yvonne, we were ecstatic, really, because Nikki had been in a bit of a state for a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit longer.
Tension arose between them whilst they were living in the flat, and Nikki Collingbourne asked her to leave. On the day of her departure, there was unpleasantness between them, and Yvonne Kaler made a complaint to the police that Nikki Collingbourne had assaulted her. And the police came to the flat and they arrested Nikki Collingbourne, and she was taken to a local police station. Having interviewed her, it wasn't long before I think they realised that there wasn't any substance to the complaint, and she was released from custody, allowed to go home, and in fact nothing further was ever done in respect of that complaint.
But whilst Nikki was busy explaining herself to local police, it seems Yvonne was taking her revenge for being evicted.
While Nikki was being questioned, Yvonne paid a locksmith to break in, basically. She proved that she'd lived there because obviously she had paperwork to say that that was her address, but obviously she wasn't on tenancy. And so the locksmith, he had no idea, because she was very manipulative. She just pulls the wool out for everyone's eyes.
Whilst Nikki was in custody with the police, Yvonne stole loads of stuff.
Once inside Nikki's flat, it seemed Yvonne stole some of her half-sister's belongings, something Nikki discovered when she arrived home.
Well, she immediately reported what had taken place to the police, that her sister had let herself in to what was Nikki's home without permission. And Yvonne Kaler was arrested as a result of that complaint.
But Yvonne seemed determined to wheedle her way out of trouble.
Yvonne Kaler was now in big trouble. She was facing a burglary charge and a trial at the Crown Court. She approached Nikki's ill, elderly mother in an attempt to persuade her to say that the property that she'd taken belonged to her.
She was subsequently charged with offences of burglary and doing acts tending and intended to pervert the course of justice, and that those proceedings, that case was due to be tried at the Crown Court at Cambridge.
While awaiting her day in court for burglary, Yvonne was released on bail on the condition she didn't contact Nikki.
She breached those conditions. She would phone her up, try and make contact with her, and did so in such a way as to cause considerable alarm to Nikki.
Nikki was certainly living in fear of Yvonne due to the burglary and perversing the course of justice.
I think she was just hoping that Yvonne would get on a plane and go back to America and just leave her in peace, because wherever she went, she was always looking over her shoulder, and it wasn't very nice for her to see her like that. She'd gone completely within herself. It's not bubbly anymore.
Yvonne's trial for burglary and perverting the course of justice was listed for May 23rd. Her half-sister Nikki was due to give evidence against her, something which police believe made Yvonne carry out her deadly plan.
Yvonne Cayler is a very controlling and manipulative person. She likes to be in control. However, once she's charged with burglary and perverting the course of justice, the court process is out of her control. So to try and wrestle that control back, she's very, very callous in planning and executing the murder of her stepsister.
The court hears how on the day she was due to stand trial for burglary, Yvonne donned her disguise and entered the flat where Nikki lived, approaching her door.
Then this shocking scene of the door being opened and what we surmised from the way that she was dressed and the towel and the half-full bath is that Nikki had been in the bathroom with a towel wrapped round her with just her underwear on. She was preparing to have a morning bath. She heard the doorbell go. She opened the door, and as she recognised it was her sister, she would have been really frightened and shocked at the realisation of seeing that although it was her sister was disguised in this bizarre way, and I think she would immediately have known that she was in really serious danger. And there was a struggle at the door. And as you watched it, there were that awful couple of seconds where it looked as though she was just about to get the door shut before finally it was forced open and Yvonne Cayler went in, and then the door shut behind her. And then 2 hours of nothing.
Once inside the flat, the prosecution claims Yvonne and Nikki argued in the kitchen, and as Nikki turned to walk away, Yvonne attacked her.
The chicken dish would have been picked up by two hands and used with considerable force, and Nikki would have been walking away from that. Certainly was enough to render her unconscious.
Then Yvonne panicked and tried to stage the scene.
There's been an attempt made to make this look like a suicide. So there was injuries to Nikki's wrists to make it look like she'd self-harmed. There was also a big tidy up of the flat, and including the staging of placing a dustpan brush in Nikki's left hand.
Having tried to make it look as though Nikki had cut herself on the broken pot and bled to death while trying to clear it up, Yvonne is once again caught on CCTV leaving the flat.
She was carrying some plastic bags that she hadn't had with her when she arrived, so she clearly had some property in the bags. One of the things which we consider she did when she left and which was in the bag were some of the remnants from the casserole pot that had been used, because one of the things the police did was they put it all back together again. It was like a 3D jigsaw, but what it demonstrated once they'd done it was that there were a number of the pieces missing. We surmised that she'd realised that there was her blood on the broken pieces, and she had taken those which she could find with bloodstains on them in the plastic carrier bag, but unfortunately for her, unfortunately for us, she left a couple behind.
When Yvonne Cayler was shown the CCTV footage, her reaction was one of denial.
Yvonne, do you recognise the person in that CCTV?
No, look, bow-legged, fat, bow-legged to me. I'm fat, but I'm not bow-legged. I look like a man to me. I couldn't see his face.
As the trial progresses, Yvonne continues to deny her involvement. Then the prosecution calls a new witness.
Actually, the worst moment thinking about it through the trial was when they brought a prisoner to give evidence against Yvonne.
We found out that there was a prisoner that Yvonne had spent some time with while she was on remand. She was going to be released quite soon.
She decided to draw a map of my flat and try and bribe a prisoner that was being released to set fire to my flat, knowing that my daughter was living here at the time with my 2 grandchildren.
She had this idea that she gave her some of her DNA, I think it was blood, on a cotton bud or something, that she could leave the evidence there and set fire to it and say, well, someone's trying to frame me, because how would my blood be at a scene when I'm in prison? So someone's obviously framed me for the murder of Nikki.
But Yvonne's bizarre plan to try to suggest she had been set up for the murder didn't sway the jury. With all the facts presented to them, including the CCTV footage and the DNA evidence, the jury retires to consider its verdict.
So at one point in the trial, I honestly thought it was going to go the other way. It was like almost like her defence was like making it kind of out like she couldn't have possibly done this, and like honestly, we honestly thought at one point maybe she's going to get away with this. Honestly, it's a really scary feeling. Even though we knew all the evidence was there, it's convincing that jury that she did that.
On December the 19th, 2016, Yvonne Kaler is found guilty of murder and sentenced to life with a minimum of 20 years.
Yvonne Kaler could have accepted the burglary charges or gone to trial on the burglary charges and let the jury decide. But she decided not to. She hatched a plan, cold, calculated, and she killed Nikki Collinborn rather than face a trial for burglary.
When the guilty verdict was read out, I think there was the biggest sigh of relief to know that she was going to be locked up and that we would just never have to have anything to do with her ever again, and that we could then tell our children that this bad person is now in prison and she can't touch any of us anymore.
After Nikki passed away, people would like come up to me and say how sorry they were, and they'd always have a memory of her helping them in some way. Like, she would literally go out of her way to help people. She loved to make people happy, and that's what Nikki lived for, because seeing other people happy made her happy. Like, I can't explain, she was just such a gentle soul.
It's a typical December morning in suburban Georgia in 2004 when 7-year-old Dalton Corbin opens the door to his parents' room to ask about breakfast.
What Dalton sees is something a young child should never have to experience in a lifetime of nightmares. Dalton's mom, Jen Corbin, lies in a pool of blood. She's dead.
Jen Corbin appears to have taken her own life. A gunshot to the head and divorce papers all point in the same direction. But as investigators dig deeper, they reveal a hornet's nest of deception, drama, and deceit beneath this perfect family's facade. And when secrets from the past, buried for 14 years, are unearthed, the truth finally comes to light. But the identity of this heartless killer is almost too devastating to believe. Atlanta, Georgia. The Big Peach, as many affectionately call it. The city of 490,000 has peach-themed street names, license plates, events, and juicy foodstuffs that entice visitors from all over America to this state capital. It's also where Max Barber settles with his own Georgia peaches, his wife Narda and their 3 daughters, including sweet middle child Jennifer Monique.
Their family is as close as any can be, and their love for each other runs deep.
Jennifer Monique Barber is born January 25th, 1971.
She's a warm, free-spirited child with a real zest for life.
Jennifer is a bright, creative girl and a popular teen. After graduating from Central Gwinnett High School in 1988, Jen moves to Savannah to study photography at the College of Art and Design.
2 years later, Jennifer finishes college and returns home.
Jen is in that exciting transition between college and committing to what's next. She's enjoying her life, figuring out what she truly wants.
She waits tables at Barnacle's Oyster Bar while figuring out the next steps in her career and her future.
At the seafood restaurant, Jennifer Barber is friendly with staff, including a bouncer named Bob Corbin. Bob thinks the bubbly Jen would be a great catch for his brother Barton, so he sets up a date.
At 6'3", Bart is a few inches taller than the 6-foot Jennifer, but he's also 7 years older. Despite the age gap, Jennifer Barber is white. The two hit it off and quickly begin dating. By all accounts, Barton Corbin is a great catch. Born in 1963, Bart comes from a strong and solid family. In addition to Bob, Bart also has a fraternal twin, Bradley.
Whereas Jen is still exploring what vocation she might choose, Bart has known his whole life.
Barton dreams of becoming a dentist from a young age after watching Hermie, the elf in the classic Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Bart is one of the few children who say they want to be something when they grow up and never waver. This is it for him.
In 1983, at 20, Barton Corbin fulfills his dream and enrolls in the University of Georgia's pre-dentistry program. He graduates with a Bachelor of Science degree and is accepted to study dentistry at the Medical College of Georgia at the age of 25.
When he meets Jennifer Barber in 1995, Bart's already a successful dentist, making good money at his practice.
The couple are head over heels in love when Bart surprises Jen with a romantic Italian vacation. It's on this trip that Jen gets pregnant.
It's early in their relationship, and it can be a very scary reality to face. But not for these two. They're overjoyed.
Bart tells his family he wants to marry Jen and become a father. He proposes, and Jen enthusiastically says yes.
Even though the pregnancy is unexpected, Jen's family is over the moon for their sweet Georgia Peach. Her fiancé Bart is mature, has a great job, and will provide for their daughter and future grandchild.
About 1 year after they meet, on September 1st, 1996, Barton and Jennifer tie the knot. Jen is 25 and 3 months pregnant.
They marry in a stunning garden ceremony, the perfect location for their union to blossom. Jen is so excited about their life together that she doesn't even care that the hem of her dress is muddy. It's one of the happiest days of her life. That is, until her bundle of joy comes along.
On March 12th, 1997, Jen gives birth to their son, Dalton.
Jennifer and Barton Corbin and baby Dalton settle into the town of Beaufort, Georgia, about 35 miles northeast of Atlanta.
Beaufort is a small city of about 14,000 residents. In 2008, CNN Money ranks it as number 3 in its annual 100 best places to live and start a business. It's a good place for Bart to grow his dental practice and for the young couple to raise a family.
Jen loves being a stay-at-home mom and tells Bart she wants another child as soon as possible. In the spring of 1998, they have a second son, Dylan. The couple also moves into a bigger house.
Their family now complete, Jen's heart couldn't be fuller.
By all outward appearances, Jen and Bart Corbin are the quintessential happy American family. They have 2 healthy sons, a thriving dental practice, a 4-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood, a houseboat, and close friends in their community.
Bart Corbin coaches Dalton's baseball team, and he dedicates 1 day a month to providing free dental care to patients in need.
Honestly, can it get any more perfect than that?
Jen Barber is also known as a kind community champion. In addition to raising her boys, Jen works at a preschool in the local Methodist church. She's a warm lap and sheltering arms for the kids she teaches.
For years, everything is as it should be. They even like their neighbors.
The Corbins become close friends with their neighbors across the street, Kelly and Steve Como. The Comos even name them as legal guardians for their daughter.
Everything is publicly practically perfect for Jen and Bart Corbin. But behind closed doors, there is trouble in paradise.
No one knows what really goes on in a marriage except the couple themselves. Just because someone smiles publicly, it's not indicative of what's happening privately.
After 8 years of marriage, 33-year-old Jen and 40-year-old Bart have reached what feels like the end of their road.
Throughout 2004, the Comos start hearing about marital problems from both Jen and Bart. The couple goes to their friends individually, sometimes to gripe, other times to seek advice.
They're taking their issues seriously and decide to seek outside help.
In December 2004, Jen and Bart book an appointment with a marriage counselor. It's a dark time, but they'll see what they can do to save the life they've worked so hard to build. A few days later, on December 4th, at about 7:30 in the morning, Kelly Como receives a frantic knock on her front door.
It's 7-year-old Dalton Corbin in his pajamas, terrified and in tears. He tells Kelly Como that he thinks his mom is dead.
Dalton tells Kelly he went into his parents' bedroom to ask about breakfast. He finds his mom on the bed, covered in blood, and runs across the street to the neighbors. Kelly rushes over to the Corbin house and finds Jennifer just as little Dalton described. It's immediately clear Jen is gone.
Kelly calls 911 and reports that Jennifer Corbin is dead. When the operator inquires, "Do you think she can be helped?" Kelly answers definitively, "No."
Police arrive on scene and quickly determine Jennifer Corbin's death is no accident.
When police arrived at the scene of the crime, they found Jennifer lying in bed with a gunshot wound behind her ear and a .38 caliber revolver involved.
Gwinnett County Detective Marcus Head sees a revolver on the bed as well as a piece of paper, which appears to be a suicide note. With no forced entry to the home, early indications point to a suicide.
Officers tracked down Bart Corbin, who wasn't at home the previous night. He'd been out with friends at a bar in Suwannee and slept at his brother Bob's place.
Upon learning of his wife Jennifer's suicide, Bart is overcome with emotions. He's in complete shock.
Detectives also interview young Dalton, but he has a different theory than the police. The 7-year-old says his mom was killed. When they ask him why he thinks this, he says because his parents have been fighting a lot.
Dalton is just 7 years old. He's too young to understand the complicated layers of a marriage. But what if he's right?
Dalton's perception of his parents' troubled marriage is confirmed by the papers discovered near Jennifer's body.
Detective Head assumes at first that the papers are suicide notes. Upon closer inspection, they're actually a divorce decree. Papers filed in Gwinnett County Superior Court by Bart Corbin's lawyer.
Their marriage was on the rocks, quite frankly. Divorce papers had been filed.
They state Bart is seeking full custody of their children.
Did a troubled marriage and the possibility of losing her kids drive Jennifer Corbin to kill herself?
The immediate evidence in the scene suggests that, yes, this is the case.
But just as Jennifer Corbin's public life looks very different from her private one, detectives start to realize there's a hidden story behind Jennifer Corbin's death, too. Bart and Jennifer Corbin are married with 2 sons, a good home, and Bart's thriving dental practice outside of Atlanta, Georgia. But behind this perfect facade hides a marriage that's falling apart.
Jennifer had confessed to friends and family that things were not as they seemed in what looked like a perfect, happy marriage and life. She was deeply unhappy, and all these elements played into the tension at the time of her death.
But no one was expecting this.
On the morning of December 4th, 2004, Jen is found by her young son with divorce papers and a gunshot wound to the head, an apparent suicide. In the bedroom, investigators carefully photograph the placement of the 33-year-old mom's body, a gun, and the divorce filing.
While Jen Corbin's death looks like a suicide, it's a violent death, so it's important to document details to understand the whole story of what happened. On Jennifer's body, the detectives discover a detail that raises a red flag.
There was something really suspicious about the gun, the gunshot wound, some of the forensics on scene. Things just didn't add up to what would be very obvious in a typical suicide.
The bullet entered Jen's head behind her ear, not at the tempo where you would expect to find it on someone who committed suicide.
It's a very awkward angle for someone to hold a gun to shoot themselves.
This isn't definitive proof that she didn't kill herself, but it does raise some suspicions.
Investigators decide to follow their hunch.
Detective Head realizes he needs to dig a little deeper into Jen Corbin's last days. He talks to Jen Corbin's friends and family. Early on, he discovers Bart Corbin has been having an affair with a woman from work.
Bart was known for extramarital affairs.
An affair could be another reason Jennifer may have committed suicide if she knew about it.
But it's Bart's behavior leading up to Jennifer's death that's bothering investigators.
The detective also finds out that on Tuesday, November 30th, a few days before Jennifer dies, Bart doesn't come into the office. There's also a police report filed that same day from Jennifer Corbin.
Jen calls 911 to report Bart has stolen her phone and her diary. She chases him out of the house, and as he drives away, Bart Corbin runs over his wife's foot. Jen declines medical treatment, so police can't take action or press any charges against Bart for domestic violence.
Police also learn about another disturbing incident a month earlier, around Thanksgiving.
Following a family dinner, Bart finds an email of a fairly romantic nature from someone named Chris inside Jen's purse.
Apparently, Bart isn't the only one in this marriage seeking attention elsewhere. But Jen's just flirting over email.
Jen tells friends the couple fight, and Bart hits her.
Jen and the kids spend the night at Heather's, Jen's sister's home. Hopefully Barton will cool off. 7-year-old Dalton won't leave Jen's side, not even to sleep.
Again, the alleged assault isn't filed with police. Jen only shares the story with close friends. Following up on the Chris tip, police learn Jen Corbin has also been having an affair. They quickly work to find Chris.
If Jen Corbin's death is ruled foul play, an illicit lover would definitely be a person of interest.
When When the identity of Jen's lover comes to light, it's not at all what police suspect.
Jen and Chris meet online playing video games.
It turns out Jen meets Chris through a fantasy role-playing game where players invent a name and character. The two end up taking their conversation beyond the game and start emailing.
Jen and Chris carry on for 2 months, flirting online. Some of the correspondence is risque, almost too hot to handle. Then, days before Jen's death, Chris comes clean and tells Jen that her real name is Anita, and she's actually a woman.
Jen logs off the game, and the next day, she sends Anita an angry email.
Jen's been catfished for months. She feels betrayed, and her trust has been broken by this person that she thought she had a real connection with.
Soon, Jen's anger subsides, and she decides to reach out to Anita again. The two then speak on the phone for the first time.
Jen says she doesn't care that Anita is a woman. She believes the connection they have is real, and Anita agrees.
They talk for hours, and that makes Anita one of the last people to talk to Jen alive.
Phone records indicate that on December 4th, 2004, the day Jen dies, she and Anita speak for several hours. Police will need to look very closely at Anita's actions for the rest of the day.
The email Bart found in Jen's purse on Thanksgiving means cops also know Bart is aware of his wife Jen's affair. Friends of Jen tell detectives she's been thinking about ending the marriage. Both parties are carrying on affairs, and neither Jen nor Bart are happy.
Suddenly, the divorce papers found near Jen's body no longer strike detectives as a strong motive for why she would kill herself.
And it's clear in talking to friends and family, Jen has no underlying depression or feelings that would be congruent with someone who is suicidal.
Early forensics indicate that it's highly unlikely that Jen fires the gun that kills her. There is no blood splatter on her hand, and the position of the entry wound is consistent with someone else firing into the back of her head.
Detective Head requests tests to confirm whether or not there is gunpowder residue on Jen's hand. If it comes back clean, this is not a suicide at all. It's murder.
Police take a closer look at the gun and trace the .38 revolver found at the scene. It isn't registered to either of the Corbins. The only record of it is from way back 1957 in Birmingham, Alabama.
As police continue to uncover the truth of Bart and Jen Corbin's less than perfect life, they learn of Bart Corbin's history of outbursts and a short temper.
Several people witnessed Bart calling his son Dalton names for failing to perform to his high standards in sports. Dalton was no fan of his father.
He's a man who had a very troubled past and a history of aggressive and violent behavior.
Once Jen's found shot dead in her bed, her family seek emergency custody, and now they are taking care of 7-year-old Dalton and 5-year-old Dylan.
Jen's parents say Bart calls their house the day after Jen's death, and Dalton claims he's afraid and does not want to talk to his dad.
The boys remain in the care of Jen's parents during the investigation. With mounting evidence, someone else pulls the trigger on 33-year-old Jen Corbin on December 4th, 2004. Investigators delve into the whereabouts of those most intimately involved with her.
In these cases, it's very often someone very close to the victim who's to blame.
Detectives track down Jen's online lover, Anita, and determine she has an alibi on December 4th, 2004. Jen's husband, Bart Corbin's whereabouts are also accounted for.
Bart goes out with friends on December 3rd and has too many drinks to drive home. So he spends the night at his brother Bob's place. Bart Corbin is still there the following morning when he is contacted by police informing him of Jen's death.
The list of possible suspects has whittled down to 0.
If Jen Corbin hasn't killed herself, and both her lover and soon-to-be ex-husband have alibis, police are stumped as to who would want this nice suburban mom dead.
Suburban Atlanta mom Jen Corbin's life seems perfect. But underneath the surface, it's anything but. When Jen is found on December 4th, 2004 with a gunshot wound to the head, it initially appears to be a suicide.
Forensic specialists find several inconsistencies and suggest it may be a homicide, yet those closest to Jen are accounted for the night of her death. Detectives are at a loss as to who would want to kill this friendly preschool teacher and devoted mom of 2.
But the more the officers look at the scene, the more staged it appears.
Neighbors Steve and Kelly Como, who reported Jen's death to police, come in for an interview. The Comos live across the street from the Corbins.
In addition to details Kelly Como provides about finding Jen's body, Steve Como reports that on December 4th at 2 a.m., he sees Bart's car pull into the driveway. 15 minutes later, the car is gone.
It's the precise window of time, according to forensics, when Jen Corbin is shot.
Even though the witness doesn't see Bart Corbin, just his car, it's enough to tell Detective Head that Jen's husband's alibi may not be as airtight as it appears.
As Detective Head starts to pick apart Bart Corbin's recent past, he receives a call about Bart's history, this time from long, long ago.
Miss Day, a colleague of Jen's from Sugar Hill Preschool, is out with her cousins and mentioned Bart Corbin's name. They want her to be cautious around Corbin. They all went to dental school together, and his girlfriend at the time died from a gunshot wound to the head.
That's one heck of a coincidence, if it is one. Bart's deceased girlfriend from his dental school days was 27-year-old Dorothy Carlisle Hearn.
The similarities were just too eerie to ignore.
The 14-year-old case is never solved, and while it appears the young girl commits suicide, it's rumored Bart killed her.
It's an explosive revelation for police. The scenarios are astoundingly similar.
Detective Head makes a beeline for any information he can find about Dorothy Hearn, whom everyone calls Dolly.
Just a 1 hour and 45-minute drive away, and Detective Head is face-to-face with Dolly's parents.
Detective Head speaks with Dolly's parents, Dr. Carlton Hearn and his wife Barbara, at their home in Washington, Georgia.
The Hearns detail for police the events leading up to 27-year-old Dolly's death on June 6, 1990.
Dolly is a dental student when she dates Barton Corbin for a short time. When the relationship ends, Barton begins a program of harassment. Dolly's parents suspect him of vandalizing her car, stealing her dental equipment, and even kidnapping her pet cat.
This is all backed up by police records from the time.
Dolly even told her parents that Bart put hairspray in the contact solution to irritate her eyes and stole her mail.
The harassment is relentless, so Dr. Hearn gives his daughter Dolly a gun to protect herself. A .38 caliber handgun, the same gun used to shoot Dolly Hearn in the head and cause her death.
With this new information, Detective Head goes to District Attorney Danny Porter to dive into the two cases of Dolly Hearn and Jen Corbin.
Through their investigation, several similarities come to light.
The gunshot wounds in both cases are notable. Both are supposedly self-inflicted, but would be incredibly difficult to pull off, which indicates the victims were shot by another individual.
Neither women have suicidal tendencies or depression, and both were making long-term life plans. Further indications suicide is unlikely.
Both were also trying to get out of a relationship with Barton Corbin.
Finally, Bart's reaction to Dolly and Jen's death is shockingly similar and equally disturbing. In both cases, he doesn't ask any questions or display any curiosity about the circumstances of their deaths.
If someone you loved and cared for apparently committed suicide or died suspiciously, you'd have a million questions. Or at the very least, one.
Detective Head contacts the Medical College of Georgia and is told Bart was questioned by police in 1990.
He also learns Dolly Hearn's cause of death is stated as undetermined, meaning her case is still technically open.
Detective Head interviews more acquaintances of Bart and Dolly from 1990.
The overwhelming sentiment is, even though no one can prove it, everyone knows Bart killed Dolly.
It's no secret he was harassing and stalking his ex-girlfriend, saying if he can't have her, no one can.
The statement, "If I can't have her, no one can," is a telltale sign of serious control issues and dangerous possessiveness.
On June 6, 1990, there are no signs of forced entry or a fight at Dolly Hearn's apartment. Investigators speculate Bart goes over under the pretense of wanting to talk and put things right.
Dolly lets Bart into her apartment and he uses the gun she has for protection against him to kill her. Then he stages it to look like a suicide.
Detective Head checks in with Jen Corbin's family to see if they've ever heard of Dorothy Hearn.
They say Jen never mentioned a former girlfriend of Bart's killing herself, which likely means he never tells her of the incident.
For 14 years, Bart has successfully outrun the shocking suspicions of his past. But as everyone knows, lightning never strikes twice. And with that, the truth about Barton Corbin is about to catch up with him. Two women, both romantically linked to Barton Corbin. 2 gunshot wounds to the head. 2 questionable deaths. But so far, 0 proof crimes were committed.
Investigators are confident Bart isn't telling the truth, but they need to make it stick.
On December 20th, 16 days after Jen Corbin is found dead, DA Danny Porter applies for a wiretapping warrant.
Porter already has evidence from Bart's phone records the day of the murder.
Despite Bart saying he slept at his brother Bob's house, his cell phone pings at a tower near the family home at the time of Jen's death. It corroborates neighbor Steve Cormo's story that he saw Bart's car pull into their driveway at about 2 a.m. on December 4th, 2004.
They were able to see that his cell phone was in the vicinity of the home at the time of her death. That was pivotal information in cracking this case and tying Bart to the scene of the crime.
As the investigation into Bart Corbin continues, his 2 sons remain with Jen's parents. They try their best to give the boys a nice Christmas, but without their mom, it's nearly impossible.
As Christmas fades away and a new year comes to pass, DA Danny Porter gets the GSR test results from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
The results are conclusive. There is gunshot residue found on Jen Corbin's body, but none found on her hands. She officially did not fire the gun that killed her. Jen Corbin's death is officially a homicide.
Detectives obtain an arrest warrant from the judge.
A surveillance team is ready outside Bart Corbin's dental practice when several more police cars converge to execute the warrant.
At around noon, Bart gets into his car and leaves the office. At a nearby intersection, 7 SWAT officers rush Bart's car, guns drawn. Bart Corbin is arrested and charged for the murder of his wife, Jen.
When Bart was arrested, he showed no resistance, but he did seem surprised. Even more so, he was particularly shocked by being linked to Dolly Hearn's crime dating back to the 1990s.
On the surface, the case against Bart Corbin looks strong. Police present Bart with the evidence against him, hoping to get a confession. They have motive, Jen's online love affair, and an end to marriage.
They have evidence. Bart's cell phone pings near Jen's house when she dies, divorce papers strategically placed by her body, Bart's vehicle spotted in the driveway at Jen's time of death.
And they have Dolly Hearn.
Despite it all, Corbin refuses to answer any questions relating to his wife or Dorothy Hearn.
Although the prosecution's case may seem strong, the fact of the matter is that there really isn't that much slam dunk evidence. Every piece could be refuted in court. Bart's wife Jen is having an affair, but so is he, and he files for a divorce. That takes jealousy as a motive off the table.
But he did file for sole custody, and he might think that the best way to ensure that might just be to get rid of Jen altogether.
There are no witnesses that actually see Bart go into the house or fire the gun. The defense could argue someone steals his car and commits the murder.
And as for the Dorothy Hearn case, it's stone cold. There's no physical evidence that puts Bart Corbin at the scene.
A key piece of evidence missing in investigators' case for Jen Corbin's shooting is the origin of the murder weapon.
The .38 caliber gun isn't registered to either Bart or Jen. If police can link the gun somehow to Bart Corbin, then they'll have conclusive evidence to tie him to Jen's murder.
Detective Head traces the gun to Kansas. From there, the gun finds its way into the possession of one Richard Wilson, who lives in Troy, Alabama.
Wilson also happens to be a buddy of Bart Corbin's. Police interview Wilson several times, and he denies ever having ownership of the gun or giving it to Bart.
With a mountain of evidence, but no smoking gun, investigators feel so close, but yet so far. They're beginning to wonder if they'll be able to mete out any justice for Jen Corbin or Dorothy Hearn after all. Georgia mom Jennifer Corbin's killing in December 2004 bears a striking resemblance to an unsolved death 14 years earlier. The common denominator in both cases? Barton Corbin.
Bart is arrested, charged, and pleads not guilty. The DA builds a strong case against him, but a lack of physical evidence may prove as an insurmountable obstacle for a jury to overcome.
Forensics shows beyond a doubt that Jen Corbin's gunshot wound is not self-inflicted. If officers are unable to connect the gun to Bart Corbin, it leaves room for reasonable doubt that he's the one who pulled the trigger.
In 2006, jury selection for Barton Corbin's murder trial begins.
The defense has hired Denise DeLaRue. She's a trial specialist in jury selection, and she was the jury consultant for the defense for the Unabomber, Boston Marathon bomber, Susan Smith, among others. She's got some significant experience in this.
While the lawyers prepare, Jennifer Corbin's family and community are reeling with emotion.
The community was in shock. It was the violent nature of the crime that was so disturbing, and the fact that he was a respected dentist. And on the surface, this was a family living the American dream.
It goes to show that you really don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
It's been almost 2 years since Jen Corbin was shot in the head in her suburban home.
And it's been almost 2 years since Dalton and Dylan have missed their mother.
Given the intense public attention the case has received over the past year and a half, the defense argues the press has infected the Gwinnett County jury pool.
The concern is over bias.
The defense will be hard-pressed to find jury members who haven't already made up their minds about Bart Corbin's guilt or innocence.
His lawyers request the trial be moved to another county. The request is denied. In August 2006, the day before jury selection is set to begin, DA Danny Porter and his legal team make one last trip to Troy to compel a judge to force Richard Wilson to take the stand as a witness for the prosecution. A hearing is set to present evidence.
They're certain that if Wilson admits to giving or selling the gun to Bart, they'll eliminate all room for doubt that Bart Corbin shot his wife Jen.
The prosecution has already confirmed through Bart's phone records that he was in Troy 5 days prior to the murder. And they have calls from Bart's phone to Richard Wilson the day after he files divorce papers.
Richard Wilson attends the hearing and is still uncooperative. He tells the judge that traveling to Lawrenceville for trial will pose an economic hardship for his family.
But the judge orders Wilson to appear at Gwinnett County Superior Court anyway, on September 25th. The date prosecutors are scheduled to start opening arguments in the case against Barton Corbin. The next day, jury selection begins.
After the first day, the pool of potential jurors is whittled down from 42 to 16.
On the second day of jury selection, a legal aide enters the courtroom and slips DA Danny Porter a note.
Porter reads the note and immediately asks the judge if he can be excused, leaving his assistant to continue questioning prospective jurors. It's a scene right out of a movie, a mystery, coming in at the 11th hour.
No one knows what caused the prosecutor to rush out of the courtroom. The one thing everybody is keenly aware of, Barton Corbin and his legal team are starting to sweat.
District Attorney Porter's team informs him that Richard Wilson, being compelled to testify, has finally broken down and admitted that he did give Bart Corbin the gun that killed Jennifer.
So a major turning point in this investigation was when investigators were able to link the gun to Bart. It was purchased in Alabama, and they were able to link that to Bart through an acquaintance, a friend that he had. This was a turning point in the case. It meant that this gun didn't just randomly appear out of nowhere.
For investigators, the origin of the gun has been the biggest hole in their case.
Now there's no refuting the evidence, and the fuzzy circumstances of what happened to Jennifer Corbin become crystal clear.
At the end of November 2004, Bart Corbin goes to Troy, Georgia to visit his buddy Richard Wilson after filing divorce papers. He tells Wilson he's afraid of what Jen may do when she receives them, and that he wants a gun for protection. In truth, it's Jennifer that needed the protection.
Bart has likely secretly been planning this murder from possibly as far back as Thanksgiving when he discovered Jen's affair.
He gets a gun, he secures the divorce papers, and he sets up his alibi.
On December 4th, 2004, Bart Corbin sneaks back home from his brother Bob's house in the middle of the night and shoots his wife in the head.
While his kids are sleeping just down the hall, he's in and out in approximately 15 minutes. And then he leaves for his 7-year-old son to find his mother's dead and bloodied body.
He must figure the suicide angle worked once before. Why not try it again?
It's a fatal mistake, not only for Jen Corbin, but for Bart as well. After being called out on an urgent piece of news, D.A. Porter returns to court and tells Bart Corbin's defense team and the judge there's been a major breakthrough in the case.
He tells them that Richard Wilson is going to testify he gave Bart Corbin the .38 caliber revolver used to shoot Jen Corbin.
Porter offers a plea deal. In return for admitting the murders of Dolly Hearn and Jen Corbin, Bart will serve 2 life sentences simultaneously and be eligible for parole. He will also be spared the possibility of execution.
It's an incredibly generous deal, considering the evidence, and he'd be unwise not to accept it. But Bart is maintaining his innocence at this point. Pleading guilty will have irrevocable consequences for him and his family.
Judge Clark halts jury selection until Thursday morning to allow a team of prosecutors to visit Troy and take a video statement from Wilson.
It'll give Bart and his defense team time to consider their next move.
D.A. Porter and his team film Richard Wilson's confession under oath.
Wilson admits Bart Corbin calls soon after Thanksgiving 2004, complaining Jen is cheating on him. He knows Wilson has guns, and he wants one. 4 days later, Bart drives to Wilson's repair shop in Troy and picks up a .38 revolver.
Porter wonders if upon learning of Jen's death, Richard ever asked Bart about it. Wilson responds no, he did not. When asked why, Wilson says simply he didn't want to know the truth.
The prosecution sends a copy of the tape to the defense team to review and make a decision regarding a plea deal.
The following day, jury selection is supposed to resume.
Bart never ended up going to trial. He accepted a plea bargain in the deaths of both Jennifer and Dolly, and that led to a conviction.
Bart's family is in the gallery. At this point, they have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, but Bart knows it's over. He asks his family to exit the courtroom.
Bart doesn't want his family to hear him confess to the murders of Dolly Hearn and his wife, Jennifer.
Bart is sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. He could be eligible for parole after 14 years.
Outside, D.A. Danny Porter tells the press he doesn't believe Corbin will ever go free.
This case highlights and underscores the importance of taking domestic violence seriously. In the case of Jennifer Corbin, there were signs that there was very unhealthy, very dangerous behaviors at play behind the scenes.
Inside, the families of both Jen and Dolly cry and hug each other.
They've all lost a daughter, a sister, a mother, a friend.
The impact on the families was particularly devastating. For Jennifer's family, not only did they lose a daughter, but Jennifer had 2 young sons. Those 2 boys are forever impacted by not having a mother in their lives.
But they're united in their grief, in their relief that justice is served, and a peace that the heartless killer responsible has been finally caught and held accountable.